Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. This is going to be an epic video because of all the things I'm covering here. Just an epic time. MSNBC flat out admitted that I was right about Kamala Harris and admitted all of it, right? Without admitting it because they can't, do it that way. Donald J. Trump with a press conference. There's an old video where Kamala Harris is with Willie Brown that just resurfaced where someone asks her if she's his daughter, which is freaking epic, right? And then this skank battle between Laura Loomer and Marjorie Taylor Greene, which just shows you. I'm going to get into how you can just see the Trump being like completely compromised because of all the stupid crap they're doing, right? And so a bunch of things to get to, more than just all that. It's just piling up. Today is Friday, September 13th. I just made this video public, and I put it up this morning, and it was green here. There was no issues. So I had put the Kate Middleton video in, and it got copyrighted for a song after it had been up for 4 hours. I just hadn't made it public. In fact, I posted this Thursday night, and these were both green. So I took out the Kate Middleton while I'm making this video that I'm going to show you in a moment about the big event that happened in September in 2001 that's on my other channel, and I'll show you that in a second. And so while I was making that other video, this video ends up getting copyrighted by ABC for the debate, right? Now, ABC put this debate out, and it was simulcast, because it has to be, on CNN and MSNBC and a whole host of other channels. And it was streamed on the internet. And now all of a sudden ABC, after I've posted almost half the debate here, and they didn't copyright that, copywriting this here, it makes no sense at all, right? They copied a little bit of it. I edited some out already, and they copyrighted it again. And so I just said, F it. Like, it's a timely video, and I have this other video I want to get out. I'm ready to make this video today. I'm really amped up about the video I'm going to make today and tomorrow. And so I put it up, and I told people, if you like the video, you can donate like $1 or something. 100 people do that. If I make $100 on the video, it's worth my time, and it's already getting a lot of donations, which is great. People are either trying to donate or donating, and so that was positive. So I'm grateful for that, because it made it like it wasn't a big waste of time. I had no idea why ABC did that. There's a couple here, $10 donations. But, if you don't donate, I don't know what the bare minimum is. Maybe it's $2, but, it's just, if enough people do that, 50 people do $2, that's $100, and, but that's already well underway. Okay, so it's Saturday, September 14th. I'm editing this thing here, and I'm scrolling through the comments, and I can see there's more than enough donations already for that video. This video should have ads on it. I don't see why it wouldn't. It was just kind of a one-off. Of course, the one on the 9/11 on my other channel won't have ads because they copyright. The content they're not going to advertise that, which is a weird thing because, they're saying that people are too disturbed by images of the big event in 2001 in September, right? But they can, it's constantly talked about, never forget, right? Like everyone says never forget, but they say, well, people don't want to see those images. And all I'm saying is that the official story is fake. Like, how is that not advertising friendly? Because, if you're saying that the government might be responsible, there might be another explanation for the events. How is that something that should be censored, right? Like, think how effed up that is. But anyways, those should be the only two videos that won't be advertiser friendly. I don't know, like especially now during the election, where they want to run ads. But let's get back to it here. So then I made this video. One of my viewers stated in a comment, which I'm happy to receive, that they're allowing people to make 9/11 videos again. They just they made it because of the content. I'm not even going to request a review because I know they're going to. It's just I don't want to draw unnecessary attention to the video. But I made 3 videos about the big event in 2001 and maybe 10 years ago. And I had a few breakthrough things that I found through my research. And, I feel like it's kind of important information. I know more about this than any other truther issues. I watched so many. This was back when I was a viewer and back when YouTube allowed these types of videos to be posted. And there's a lot of disinformation out there, but not like it is today. And there's a lot more sincere truthers. And this thing for us who were awakened by this particular event is a big deal. So this is on my Apocalypse Now channel, which is linked in all of my videos, in the description box of all my videos. And so if people want to check that out, because it's going to tie into the whole Laura Loomer Trump thing, because they're bringing that back up. And it just, it ties into the debate as well, because the debate was on September 10th. And I was just feeling it like every year. It's a kind of a bummer for me when that day rolls around. Back when I watched videos and I thought about this, it was when I was more hopeful that there was a solution to saving the system. And I thought you could wake everybody up, and I thought people would wake up the same way I did. And that wasn't the case, right? And so, as I became more realistic and practical about the situation, which I'll cover in a moment here in terms of let me switch over to the voiceover. So you go through stages when you're a truther and when you're a truth seeker. And not everybody's a truth seeker. Some people are just disgruntled, or they feel like it's, they feel like a loser, and they feel justified in some kind of, a way that they're, people who feel that they're ostracized or they're outcasts, people who are Republican, they watch the media and they feel like their group is being targeted. And so they become truthers only in the sense to prove their original beliefs right, but they don't change. There's so many people who are right-wing truthers who are Trumpers that haven't changed from their original beliefs, right? And so there's a certain personality type. It's multiple personality types. People who want to know the truth, right? So if you're given an option, and, I talk about how difficult it is to read the ingredients, because once you wake up, like in the Matrix movie, once you take the red pill, everything gets way harder. I mean, all of us have this, thought, maybe they'd like to go back to the Matrix every once in a while. It'd be so easy to just go back to sleep, right? Because your life doesn't get easier. And so it just comes down to, do you want to be deceived, or do you want to go on some sort of journey to where you're finding the truth, right? Finding why you're here, what's the real purpose? Not just going into the lies, but going into the light, like not going through the darkness and, swimming through the cesspool and looking at things, go, aha, I found this and I found that, turning over every rock and finding every slimy creature, but actually seeking the truth. Like, life here is a deception. Our system, the people who run it, are lying to us. And what's the truth? And, ultimately becomes a spiritual truth, which I talk about quite often here. And so the people who have this type of personality, when you wake up to certain events, you go through these different phases. And when you first wake up, your thought is, wow, when everybody finds out what I just found out, when everyone hears the information I just heard, if everyone watched this video, the world would be transformed because we all would realize the truth of it, right? When you wake up to the system being corrupt, but then you start telling your friends and family, and they're looking at you like you're crazy, especially now, where truthers have been so much demonized, and you realize it's just the opposite. Not only are people not, going to see the thing the way you see it, but they're actually going to push back against it. And there is a energetic movement to suppress this information, and these people go out of their way not to hear it. They'll do anything to avoid it, and it fractures relationships and all these things, right? And so that was the original Alex Jones model, where there was an information war, which we know has been lost, is a complete failure, because it was predicated on the idea that when people received this information, they would wake up and take down the system, and the system could be rebuilt or could be made into a good system then, once we got rid of these deep state evil people. And then once you dive into it, you realize, it's just a simplistic, childish way to look at it, because The whole system is corrupt and evil, and we're a part of that system. So there's no changing the system. The system is a demonic system, and there's no fixing it. And once you realize that, and you realize that most people don't want to wake up, and you realize if you did wake everybody up, it wouldn't fix the system. It would just it would collapse the system, because the system is based in deception. So you need sheeple. If we didn't have sheeple, the system would collapse. In fact, we all have to, even when we know the system is corrupt, we have to play along. We all have to go along with it, right? And I've learned to accept this and be grateful for it, because I realize that the waking up and the truth seeking is not for everybody. And not everyone can be a spiritual person. Not everybody can connect to God within. And most people can move a little bit, change a little bit. Some people can't change at all. But very few people can rework their whole internal world and, rearrange the way, the lens in which they see the world and still remain sane, right? Like, very few people can do the whole, do the big kahuna, can do the whole enchilada, right? And there's a good reason for that. I kind of understand some of it. Maybe some of it I don't understand. But, there's just levels to consciousness, and not everybody is on a level yet and has enough experience with human life to make the kind of wholesale changes you have to make to become a spiritual person and change your whole orientation to existence. But also you have to have a job, and you have to interact with sheeple, and you have to, there's times you can't talk about what you believe, right? Like with your family members, your parents. Like, I didn't talk to my mother about any of this because she didn't need to hear it. She was 90 years old, right? 80-something years old, 90 years old when I started to wake up. So, like, I couldn't talk to her about it. I didn't want to. Why upset her when she isn't going to be able to do shit about it? And, what's changing wasn't really for her, right? But in that, there becomes this us against them, this sheeple against the truthers, right? Us against the establishment. And we're being demonized and targeted. And, there's this adversarial type situation. And so when somebody comes along and is in the mainstream, persona, I mean, Kennedy RFK Jr. a little bit was an example of this. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a better example. And this person, Laura Loomer, which I'll get into these two nightmares of, people. When they start, all the people that are QBs and people who are even, woke people who, have similar, at least we have some common beliefs, right? We have more in common with them than we do with sheeple in some ways, right? Even though we're not, our personalities might not be the same, and our orientation to life is quite different, but we share the same sort of fight that we're having, to some extent. And so it's very easy to fall on those like Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, maybe better examples to some extent. But the people who are like that, especially the ones that come off as crazy, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Laura Loomer, the ones who are like batshit crazy, Donald Trump's another example of this. The people that are doing damage to, making our point of view sound stupid. I mean, all the QBs, all the flat earthers, not all of them, but the ones that act in a way that, just pushes people away. And it helps the establishment, other people, to put us in a box of crazy conspiracy theory nut jobs. They want to profile us. Alex Jones is probably the biggest example of this. And they act in a way that's completely counterproductive to us all. They're not our friends, and we don't even, we shouldn't even want them on our team, right? It's like when you were a kid and there's one kid who sucks so bad at sports and he's always like the last one picked, and you feel bad for the kid, but you have him on your team and you're going to lose. You groan and you say, I'll take Jimmy, because you're picking teams with one of your friends. And you go and you take the best kids of your friends first, whatever it is, right? You take the best kids and kids that you're friends with. And then, there's a couple of kids left. And there's always that one kid, if you get him on a team, he's going to completely sabotage any chance of winning, right? Years ago when I worked at my first treatment center, with kids who were, sex offenders, these kids were called sexually reactive. They had been sexually abused and they had abused other kids. And there was one kid, he was kind of a farm boy, and was kind of innocent to some extent, but he suffered so much horrific abuse. He was like, he'd get psycho and get like evil, like he was crazy. And he was, like a 14-year-old kid that was medicated so heavily he could barely function, right? And he was overweight, he was uncoordinated, and then he was on on this medication. And we were playing kickball, and I think I was the pitcher. And he got up to, again, we're playing kickball with a kid who's 14 or 13 or 14, but kind of a big kid. And I rolled the ball. Whoever pitched the ball, I think it was pretty sure it was me. And I rode it so slowly, it took about 30 seconds just to reach him. Like the thing was barely moving when he went to kick it. Like there was no, I mean, the thing was so slow, it was not really a moving target. Like it was, just about to stop. Like it was so slow, it was about to stop. And he kicked over it, right? He missed it with his foot. We're playing fucking kickball, and the guy missed it with his foot because he's so heavily medicated. He took a few little uncoordinated steps, and then he rolled his foot over the ball, right? And then he rolled it back, and now his foot's on top of the ball, right? He missed the kick, and then his foot comes back, and the ball's going so slowly, it doesn't really move. So now he pulls his foot back, and it's right on top of the ball, and his momentum somehow, he's standing like it's like this unbelievably uncoordinated unathletic play. And he's now standing on top of the ball on one foot. And he doesn't have the athletic ability to kick the ball, never mind pull something like that off. And so now he goes like he flies in the air, and he comes down straight down on his knees, right? And one of the knees rips open we're playing on like a basketball court, like a cement basketball court outside. And his niece just starts gushing blood, and I'm like, holy fuck. I never seen anything that uncoordinated my entire life. And now that he's got a cut, he's bleeding, it's a complete nightmare, right? Like it's paperwork and forms, and he's crying, and everyone, like the kids are kids are laughing because these kids are, they're just horrible kids. But it's kind of funny. Like the adults are trying not to laugh because, no one's ever saw anything like this. And poor kid's so medicated. He's got this Thorazine shuffle, right? But that's what I'm talking about. Like that kid, we were playing soccer one time, and I was playing goalie. Like I was tired and whatever, the adults were supposed to be a part of the game, and we're trying to get the kids, involved and run them as much as possible so they didn't act out. And they, a lot of them were on medications at night, and because they would have, that's when they were abused when they were kids, and they would start flipping out at night, and it was a whole thing. But we found when we ran the kids, the best game was ultimate frisbee. The kids couldn't have physical contact because they're all little sex offenders, right? So it's a whole thing. And, I'm in one goal. These were like a legitimate kid's soccer field, and the ball comes rolling to me, and he was in the other goal. And I kicked the ball the length of the field, and it's rolling, and I'm like, he's not going to get it. And like, I'm not like a great soccer player, but I'm a good athlete, whatever. And the ball rolls into the goal. It goes between his legs and his hands. It's just rolling really slowly by the time it reaches him. But, he's that kind of kid, right? He's like a Laura Lumer or, a Marjorie Taylor Greene. And you can see from what I'm going to present about Trump here, and also to Kamala, they keep on pandering to the people that are already voting for them. They think they win when they talk about things that are just for the people that are hardcore supporters of theirs. And I'll give you an example when we talk about Kamala in the beginning here. And I'll give you another example with Trump and these other people. You have to bail on these people and your sort of extreme points of view, and you have to go to the middle where these morons who can't make up their frickin' minds haven't decided who to vote for yet, and you have to target those people. These are billion-dollar campaigns, and they have internal polling, and they have all kinds of systems and algorithms to figure out, the people who haven't voted yet, these demographics, these, handful of people in 10 small states, really 5 states, Pennsylvania being the big one, and figuring out what they want to hear and saying it to them, because they're two-faced liars, and they can't even do that, right? Kamala couldn't do it during the debate. Trump was kind of trying a little bit, but then he just said the thing about the dog. And, don't say stupid shit, extreme stuff that your base wants to hear. Say things that the people who haven't voted want to hear, right? You're trying to win a frickin' election, and what you have is two losers. They're both seem to be self-sabotaging or their campaigns are the most incompetent billion-dollar campaigns in the history. I mean, there's only been a short history of billion-dollar campaigns, starting with Hillary Clinton in 2016. So with that in mind, let's get into it here. Okay, disappointments, all of you. One of my viewers sent me this on Facebook. There's 3 memes I want to get to that really have, well, I guess, something to do with what I'm talking about here. The next meme is this one from They Live for War. Excellent meme here. And then this one, why didn't you all cheat this hard for me? So there's that. Okay, so needle hasn't moved much towards Harris, even though it was clear Trump lost the debate. Well, why was it clear then? Like, the purpose of the debate was to win votes, right? Like, you guys don't know how to win. And so this is like so pathetic because they're going to admit to everything that I've been saying, straight up admit it, but then not admit it, right? And this is what you can expect from MSNBC.
Jeremy, the headline of your latest New York Times piece is Pundits Say Harris Won the Debate. Undecided Voters Weren't So Sure. Explain.
So a lot of undecided voters, and the few that there are, because let's be clear, like this election is still going to be decided on a knife's edge. All the polling confirms that, and I'm told even some of the private polling that the campaigns have been looking at since the debate affirms that the needle has not moved much, even though it's very clear that Donald Trump lost this debate.
Is it clear? How is it clear? See, this is the arrogance of the pundits, that they think their opinions matter. They're wrong about everything. They've been consistently wrong because their opinions are based in the people that support these channels, whether it be Pfizer or whether it be, the CIA, these networks. And so they have to say things that agree with the beastly system that are fundamentally dishonest. And they have this very narrow bandwidth where they can form their opinions. And if they're, on CNN or MSNBC, they have even a smaller bandwidth because they can't even be Republicans and talk about Trump or something in a positive way. And so they're always wrong because they can't, branch out to reality and not the reality they've created, their echo chamber. And so they're useless. These experts and pundits are useless. They're always wrong. And they're guiding humanity, they're guiding the Americans towards a desired outcome based in what they believe should be, which is Kamala Harris being elected, even though their true handlers may have already picked Trump. Like, they're so low down the pecking order, they don't even know, what's going to happen. Remember what happened in 2016 when all these pundits and all the pollsters said Hillary Clinton was going to win in a shoo-in. They were laughing at Trump possibly being able to win. That's one of the reasons why they're saying it's going to come down to the razor's edge here, because they don't want people to get overconfident and cocky like they did in 2016, because that didn't work. They thought if they said that Hillary Clinton was going to win, the Republicans weren't going to come out and vote, right? And so she didn't win the debate if the poll numbers didn't move, because she was the one that needed to define herself, right? Donald Trump was already defined as a person. He wasn't going to change many people's minds. People understand who Donald Trump is. And if they're looking for a reason to not vote for Trump, Kamala didn't give it to them, right? I'll get into the resting. Well, let's see the resting bitch face here. So my wife and I went for a walk after I completed the last video or 2 videos ago where I was talking about resting bitch face. I think it was last video, and Kamala's resting bitch face in the debate, and I articulated it in a way that I was like, I wish I had put this in the video, but it's great I can put it in here because it still applies, and it's, that resting bitch face is universal to men, right? It doesn't matter whether you're a young kid, you're a 7-year-old boy, and it's a 7-year-old girl giving you resting bitch face or giving you that look, right? Every man has experienced this look, whether it's their mom or their sisters, their girlfriends or their wives, co-workers, right? Men are aware of this expression. Not that they don't deserve it at times, right? Like, it's the, oh, look at you stupid man look, right? and it transcends race and, all these different demographics, ethnicity, age and time and space. And if there's aliens out there somewhere and there's men and women, if it's a binary system, every male's familiar with this look. And you would ask any man, do you think this was a good idea for her to look at Trump this way? Because when you're experiencing something like a debate or a movie or a TV show, like, you put yourself in the situation, right? Like, people feel like when Trump's getting attacked, they feel like they're getting attacked. Or when Kamala is doing something, they feel like, oh, wow, like, that's me doing it, right? They're like, when you root for a team, like, you're rooting for, you're watching a sporting event, and it feels like you're, part of the team, right? And the resting bitch face, amongst many other things, triggers something in you. It makes you have a reaction. It just makes it more repulsive. And so if you're a feminist or a woman who's like mad at men, a woman's been mistreated by men, like, most of them are, like, you have some kind of, you hate Trump, and you're looking at it, you're like, oh my God, give it to him, Kamala. Give him that resting bitch face. Yeah, you're smoking him. And so for them, they're thinking, oh wow, this is winning. Like, look at her stare him down. Look at her demean that man. Like, they think this is like a good thing, like women to have that, whatever. But she already has an edge with women, especially feminist women. Oh, feminist women are going to vote for Trump, right? None of these, And so and I'm going to make the same point about Trump later. This isn't winning for her because she needs to bring in men. Like, she has to, in these swing states, she's got to bring in these men. And this isn't winning for men. Like, men aren't going to want to vote for her. Like, she's defying herself. Oh my God, look at that resting bitch face. Like, they're just, they now have a negative association with her. And it went on for the whole debate. And it was just the laughing at him and smirking at him and looking at him in a condescending way. And, whoever told her to do this should be fired because, and I don't know what her other options are. She has that laugh, which is a genuine laugh, but, it's off-putting. And then the rest of her faces are either fear. I think I say this later on. I'm redoing this audio here because I'm editing. But I think I say later in the video about her, her options. She looks worried or fearful when she's not laughing, and now there's these faces and these smirks where she's looking down at Trump. Oh, you're so beneath me. And, the people she's trying to win over in Pennsylvania and these other, swing states, they're not going to dig that shit, right?
What people are ultimately looking for who are still on the fence is a reason to go to the polls for Kamala Harris. I'm talking specifically about Trump curious or former diehard Trump supporters who are now uncomfortable with voting for him but might do it again. They want to see her sell herself. Why? What are you going to do for me, I think, is what we heard most.
Do you think it's about policy?
Okay, so that's what I said, right? She didn't define herself, but wait till this girl drops this thing first.
Or is it that they look at her and they say, gosh, she's a woman, she's a black woman, black and Indian woman. Is there a little just underlying discomfort with that because we've never seen a woman in that position before? And do they need just to see her more?
Again, she's bringing it down to being woman or her racial identity. And that's not it. Maybe that's it for people. Like, there's some people that want to vote for a white man, right? Just like some people want to vote for a woman. Like, there's, feminists who would rather vote for a woman. So, like, there's going to be that, right? But she's having issues with black men. I don't think she's having issues with the Indian community, but maybe she is, right? But the resting bitch face is a big part of it. It's how she comes across. She wasn't likable in 2020, so she isn't going to be likable now. And they know that. Let's go forward here.
More. To hear her more, maybe not necessarily about specific policy, but just to see her in a presidential genre, atmosphere, milieu. I don't think I'm using all those words incorrectly. To make him feel more comfortable with voting for her to be president of the United States. We're not talking about race that much in this debate, at least not outwardly. We're not. She's not talking about it. She's not talking about how she's a woman.
Right.
But our voters may be feeling it.
I think
they're not. That's not what people are feeling.
That she knows that in order to reach centrist voters, swing voters, she shouldn't talk about what she is in terms of her gender and her race. She should talk.
She does it all the time. She does the same mistake that Trump does. She's constantly pandering to the people that are already going to vote to her. vote for her. And that's partially because she's trying to create bigger rallies, right? I mean, this is, they saw a need to create bigger rallies. They knew that going into this election, they had to show that they had as much enthusiasm, even if it was fake, as Trump did. Because there was always an enthusiasm gap. There was with Hillary Clinton. Joe Biden, they hid Joe Biden away because of COVID. And so they knew that they had to do something to make it look like people were really enthusiastic. So they created that whole, joyful campaign bullshit thing they did and all the rest of it. That's completely manufactured. And so when you're going to do that, you can't be talking to the middle ground. You have to pander to the people who are enthusiastic about being a Democrat. It's the same problem Trump has. Like, you have to shrink your, the fan base, because you can't have a big tent, because those people don't want to hear centrist stuff, right? The people going to these rallies, they're the most enthusiastic people are extremists.
About what she's going to do as president. And that's why she needs to be out there more, to your question. People need to feel like they can trust her to govern, that she can get things through Congress. I mean, the thing that I heard most in talking to these voters is they want Washington to not be broken anymore. So for the next president,
These people are delusional, right?
be able to deliver for them, which is why the
Look at the sneakers she's rocking.
debate wasn't such a selling point, because what Kamala Harris did really well, by the way, was talk about how she sees a disastrous second Trump term. She
didn't do that very well. You guys just made that up because she, was given these lines, and she repeated the line she was given in a failed way. Trump wasn't, Trump is Trump. Like, Trump can't be better than he is. I mean, he did his best, but Trump isn't, they can't reinvent Trump. Like, they can't, have Trump 2.0. They're not going to do that, right? I mean, Trump is talking about, later on I'll show you, he wants to get rid of taxes on overtime. Like, he's got all this stuff he's just trying to throw out there. But Trump is fundamentally Trump. And as you get older, you can't really change your personality, reinvent yourself. They're trying to invent Kamala Harris, because a Kamala Harris that exists is not somebody who could win an election, right? And so they've done what they always do, which is they focus on Trump. So he's admitting what I said, that she was, she had an opportunity to define herself and show everybody who she was and what she believed, but she made it about Trump, which they've been doing now for the past 8 years.
didn't talk a whole lot about what a Harris term was going to be.
Oh, Donald Trump says there will be no third debate. He's just put that up on his social media, saying that he doesn't need to. He's a prize fighter and he won. Without another debate, and by the way, that debate reached 70 million people, a whole lot of people. How does she do that? Is it more TV news interviews? Please say yes.
Please say yes. She's done one. And so this is the other piece here. And he's going to talk about it. He's going to reaffirm what I have been saying. And again, in a dickish, weak-ass way, but, they're going to say what I've been saying, but not as truthful and honest and objective as I'm saying it, right? Because, they can't do that. But this is the truth. They're finally getting to the truth here. She did so great in the debate, and they were so comfortable as her as a candidate. Why has she only done one interview where it was completely controlled, right? It was like she was there with her, her uncle, the strange uncle, vice president, who was there with her, like George W. Bush bringing Dick Cheney to the hearing that he went when he got, had interviewed by the FBI or CIA or whatever that was. I mean, she's bringing like an elder person with her. She can't be at an interview on her own. It was a complete softball questions. She knew everything that was going to come, and the questions. And then the debate was the same way. I mean, they were asking if she actually was given the questions beforehand at the debate. Clearly, ABC assured her that they were going to go after Trump and it was going to be rigged for her. So she's had these two, media appearances, one interview and one debate in over a month. She only has 3 months to make her case, and everything else has been completely staged, and those things were staged and handled. No press conference. She's not going to take questions from Fox News or something like that, right? She's not going to do a press conference about, when she knew about Joe Biden's senility. If she was so steady as a candidate, how come she can't do a freaking press conference? How come she can't do multiple interviews? How come she can't do 2-3 interviews a week? Because there's going to be gaffes, there's going to be slippage, there's going to be things she's going to say, and people are going to get pissed off, and she's going to lose voters, and she's already struggling to, just be neck and neck with Trump, right? And so they're hiding her away. So if she did such a great job, then they wouldn't be hiding her. Like, it's a complete lie. And these pundits should be saying that. If she's being hidden, it's because she sucks, right? They don't hide away somebody who's good. Like if she was they hide away people that are unlikable, right? They hide away people who have resting bitch face and have a strange laugh and say strange shit, right?
I would hope so. I mean, not just for our purposes.
Editorial board interview.
Right, but she has to get out there. The one attack that has been effective that Trump and his allies have leveled at her is that she's been hiding and she's afraid to answer questions. The rest of the stuff...
It's not an attack, it's truth, and you guys should be jumping in on it.
Comrade Kamala, crazy Kamala, it's nonsense. It's not working. And Trump knows that, or else he'd be repeating it ad nauseum. We'll see if he does another debate, but in the absence of that, it's actually a good thing for her because she can go out there and basically continue to talk to voters on her terms, which is the most kind of controlled way to do it.
The campaign's going to...
Yeah, doing it in a controlled way means that you suck. Like, you can't stand the pressure. How is she going to be president? She's not going to have any press conference when she's president. And right now she has the advantage of Donald Trump. She wins the presidency, Trump is dead. People stopped paying attention to Trump's court cases after about a year after Biden had been elected. They had Trump fatigue. They were like, are you guys still talking about Trump? We have a new president. We voted this guy in. Why are you still talking about Trump? And they they lost interest. CNN and MSNBC's ratings plummeted. They didn't have a second act. They just had the Trump thing. And, Trump was charged with all these various crimes, so they kept on covering it. But no one was watching them do it, right? Because they were just over it. Like, they're over this thing. And as soon as she wins, if she wins, Trump will more or less disappear. There'll be whatever he contests the election. There'll be, maybe she gets a year, like a honeymoon period. And then there's going to be some real shit she has to deal with. And she's going to have to go in front of the press who are going to, start looking at her past and look at how she got elected. She's not legitimized, right? And there's no longer, at least I'm better than Trump because Trump is gone. And so she's going to have to do the job, right? And she isn't going to have to make decisions because she's completely controlled and handled. But she's going to have to be the face of this presidency. And she's not going to be up to the challenge, right? She's kind of crazy, too, and she's weak, and, like, she says stupid stuff. And, she's not built for it. And the pressure will start getting to her. I mean, wait till she can no longer laugh. Like, when laughing will be inappropriate. Wait till she has to deal with, like, real tragedy and mistakes she's made. She has to, like, basically, apologize to the American people. Wait till that shit goes down. She has to come out, and when she laughs, it's going to sound insincere and, all of those things, right? And so they should be saying, stop with these controlled events because no one's watching them. Like, the people who are watching them are her fans. So she's not campaigning here. But what they're hoping is, like, they don't want her to slip up, and they know that she will. So they're hiding her away, and that means that she sucks, right? They acknowledge that she's unlikable. If they push her out there, people will realize she's unlikable, and she'll lose. Like, that's the only reason they're doing what they're doing. What's the other reason? Name what other good reason to hide her away? If she was so great, then rolling her out there would win more votes. Why are they not rolling her out there, right?
It says they're going to be putting her out in front of a lot of voters in smaller venues. They're also going to be putting her out in front of local news in various swing states. Remember, this is going to come down to not necessarily a national audience, but a couple of counties in a few swing states.
Yeah.
All right, Jeremy Peters, really good to have you. Thanks for
showing. So they admitted to everything that I said without admitting to it because they're still pretending that she won. She didn't win if there's no benefit to voters, right? That's why she wants a second debate. And, if it was on Fox News or somewhere, Fox News is still, Fox News is going along with this narrative as far as I can tell that she won. So there's all of those things. And so it's complete, it's an absolute joke. And this is her, again, not finding a way to connect with these few people, these dopes out there who can't make up their mind, these fence riders in these swing states. And with all this money, they can't find a way to bring some of these people in because she sucks that bad. And she's pandering to the people that, that she, that are already voting for her. And that's always a mistake, right? But you can't, every time she gets in front of a microphone, it has the potential of being a viral video not a good one against her. Same thing with Trump. Every time he gets in front of a microphone, there's the potential for a viral video. So I haven't talked about this in a while, but it's gotten easier and easier for me to make videos over the years because an idea will come to me like inspirationally. Like there's things that you think yourself, and then there's things that come to you through the ether. And I think people aren't aware how much they're influenced, maybe by etheric beings or, divinity within them, or just, demons or whatever it might be, disembodied souls, or, where you hear things that aren't your own thoughts. I think people would be surprised, especially when people who do creative projects, oftentimes they're channeling something, right? And one of the ways you can tell that that's happening is like there'll be support for your idea. So I'll get an idea about something and I'll say it, I'll voice over or whatever. And then, like in this case, this was from yesterday. Today's Saturday, September 14th. But yesterday, I go to eat lunch and I turn on the news and, I was just talking about this. I made the, the whatever it was, that one segment of the video that you watched. And I was talking about how they're just manufacturing support for Kamala. So I turn on CNN or MSNBC, one of the two, CNN, I guess, MSNBC first. And they're covering her Pennsylvania speech here. And then I flip over to CNN and they're covering the same speech and there's no reason for it because it's not really newsworthy.
My plan that you heard about the other night will give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing that not everybody, like my opponent, got handed $40 million on a silver tray and then filed for bankruptcy 6 times.
Okay, so she said 400 million at the debate and now it's only 40. So how much did he get from his dad, right? And a silver platter, not tray. But then I switch over to CNN and they're doing the same thing. And the response from the crowd is almost like it's audio that they're, it's taped audio, like a laugh track.
Small businesses, knowing that not everybody, like my opponent, got handed $40 million on a silver tray and then filed for bankruptcy 6 times.
And I should have maybe done a little bit longer segments here because the response from the crowd is just so artificial. And I've pointed this out before. These are not organic crowds. They had an enthusiasm gap where the people who love Trump, now people hate Trump. Trump is a very divisive figure, but people love him and hate him. Where the people who, the Democratic politicians, other than Bernie Sanders, had no enthusiasm. And they can't generate crowds, and people don't turn out to see them, and they don't react in some kind of way like they're doing here. And so the response from the audience is so infomercial. It's so like they're paid people. And, this is a big point for Trump, like it really bothers him, this whole thing. But they're just manufacturing this candidate. And so both CNN and MSNBC decide to cover this speech when all of them want to interview her. She should be doing press conferences. She should be doing national interviews. Again, she's an undefined entity, and they're hiding her away. Someone wrote a comment saying, you can tell who won the debate by the fact that there's all this enthusiasm for Kamala Harris and that she's gotten all this fundraising, and that means she won the debate, and the Republicans are bummed. And I'm like, yeah, there was a lot of fundraising that happened for Joe Biden after he, like after his last debate, right? Like, so there was, and then the fundraising dried up. But at first, right after the debate, there was he raised like $30 million or something like that, right? And so, even after that, disastrous debate. Like, it's just silly. Like, she's a manufactured person, persona. And MSNBC and CNN are complicit in giving her free advertising here. But I don't know if this actually works for her because the more that people see her, the more they're not going to like her. Like, they know that they got an unlikable person, like a wag the dog type of situation. where they can't roll her out there. It's not like she's senile. It's not like she's going to do a Joe Biden. Not like she's wearing diapers, at least as far as we know, right? It's that she is so unlikable. And the more people see her, the more they're going to not like her. They're hiding her away. And so that's, I mean, if she wins, that's like fabulous in some way. It's amazing that they could do that. Like, it shows you how bad the system is. They could just, put this person in who got her start on her knees, and a young, 29-year-old aspiring lawyer, and worked her way through the political system, never winning an election. And then they rigged whatever they rig against Trump. And of course, Trump presents a wonderful opportunity for anybody because people hate him so much. And there's so much hatred for him out there that could convert into possible votes. And, we don't even know, I mean, how much the voting even matters. Like, I mean, the way the system works now. And so, like, it could be just so manufactured and so scripted and you'll kind of see it. You're seeing it right now because both people are playing into it. I'm going to show you how Trump is playing into it in a bit here. Let's go to this other thing here, though, first. Okay, so this is an old Diane Sawyer Primetime Live video.
Sawyer.
Fasten your seatbelts. If you haven't met Willie Brown yet, you're in for a lively ride. He is about to become the first black mayor of San Francisco. And while so many members of Congress are fleeing politics in droves, he wants to tell you why he still loves the game. And
so this was, the beginning part, and they have a better quality one here. Sky News Australia picked this up, right?
Notorious for his flamboyant lifestyle.
Flamboyant.
Flashy clothes, fancy parties, fine women, and
let's go a little bit further. We'll go back to that.
Fast cars.
You should from now on address me as the mayor.
There she is there, right? Look, there she is there, like a grumpy skank, with her crazy smile.
If ever a man...
Look at her. Yeah, I want to be president someday, and you're going to help.
...and a municipality were made for each other, it is this man, this place.
And so, 29 or 30-year-old or whatever she was at this particular time, I don't know when this was shot, when she was dating this guy, but there's, imagery here of her being by his side. And she was dating a guy who was 61 and she was 29 and whatever. There was that 32-year age gap. And the reason she did this was he gave her a Mercedes and he gave her various jobs that she wouldn't have otherwise gotten. We all know this. It's kind of, there for everyone to kind of know already. But this is key to, everything I'm going to talk about later with her as we go through this, where they're just, manufacturing a narrative, because that's not a narrative that wins you the president, right? As a woman, especially feminist women who, sleeping with a man to get ahead for a feminist, I don't know exactly, how they all feel about that, but most women don't like that, right? Most women have been passed over by some Babylonian hoe, and they, who used her sexuality to get a job that they would have gotten, that they more deserved. Like, she didn't deserve the jobs if she used her sexuality to, buy influence with this guy who was an influencer and was a kingmaker. And so she got with this guy and he promoted her career. It was like I think close to $500,000 in salary and some of these other things that she got, the Mercedes-Benz. And she got her foot in the door because, she put on her knee pads and she serviced this guy, right? And so that's her story, and that is not a story that, the first female president of the United States, well, maybe it's exactly the story that... But, in terms of what feminists want, hardworking women who do a better job than men and, who are somehow, competing in a rigged system against them, find their way to the top despite all the things, all the adversity that they suffer. And that's, that's not her story. And then somebody sent me this morning.
Led the fight for freedom.
generations
She's got the guzzle lines here, right?
of Americans before us, many from right here, led the fight for freedom.
Wait, there's something going on. What's going on? There's a problem.
Let's get a medic.
Unless these are actors, and they very well may be. The audience is now more and more trained for fainting people and what to do. It's become a normal thing, right? You know, it's just the new normal.
Do we have a medic?
Medic. We got a medic. Who is a medic?
Medic over there, please. Let's get a medic over there.
Here comes the big line. This is their take on it coming up.
Yeah, but let's make sure. See, this is who we are. We look out for each other. That's what leaders do. Looking out for each other.
That's what leaders do. Trump would have let you die. Trump would have just sat there and said, hey, step over that person. You know, just sit on that person. Just use them as a stool. I mean, the Republicans would have just let you die, even though we've seen him pull the same bullshit as his rallies, right? But, you know, we care about people. If we see somebody fainting in something like this, we'll say, go get a medic. Because that's the kind of leader I am. Republicans, they were like, oh, you're screwed. You roll them out. You're not going to be able to vote. Get out of here, right? Take them off in a stretcher. But we actually care. That's their big take on it. You know, we're neighbors, and neighbors help neighbors. It's like some stupid shit that they're rolling out.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Okay, so now we're going to get into this piece of shit for saying these things and how the internet's a buzz. Now, the takeaway from the debate is this. This is the moment. Nobody's talking about anything else, right? And it's every time I turn on CNN and MSNBC. So today's Saturday the 14th. The debate was on Tuesday. And they started talking about this on Wednesday. They continued on Thursday. And then they brought in Loomer into this thing. And so the mainstream media thinks this is a winning issue to beat Trump over the head with. Trump has doubled down in a stupid way here. And I'm even getting comments in my videos saying Haitian people like to eat cats. You know, people are saying that. People who didn't care about Haitian people on Monday now are really worried about Haitian people eating cats, right? But I want to talk about just being an irresponsible piece of shit and, you know, how this is just loser behavior. Like, it's not generating a win. And the irresponsibility of Trump. Like, that's one of the problems with Trump. He's just so irresponsible. And his irresponsibility hurts other people. So it started with Andrea Mitchell and somebody else. Andrea Mitchell showed Laura Lumer, and I didn't know who, you know, I kind of remembered who that was, and my wife was kind of explaining. I'll get into her in a bit because she sucks. You know, these fake truthers that I was talking about in the beginning of the video. I'm going to talk about it more here. And then they set in on it here. Let's watch these two clips I got off of the TV.
Op-ed today. As for the former president, his choice of associates is in the spotlight on two fronts tonight. There's right-wing agitator Laura Lumer, who's been traveling to the debate and yesterday to 9/11 remembrances. She's been criticized by Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, of all people, for a racist tweet about the vice president's Indian heritage. More on that coming up. There's also new reporting from National Public Radio on this guy. His name is Timothy Hale Cusinelli. And yes, federal prosecutors describe him as a white supremacist. And if the mustache didn't lead you to this conclusion, a Nazi sympathizer.
So the Democrats realized that they had an enthusiasm gap. They knew some of their vulnerabilities, right? They knew they were vulnerable on the economy and, you know, the inflation, which they can't fix, and people's idea of Joe Biden. And so they've campaigned around those things. They found ways to solve those problems. They're not, you know, lock solid, but they're at least aware of those things. One of the ways Trump lost last time, and, you know, I talk about this with my wife's friend. She's a Republican who really liked Trump, and she was really pissed at him for not going strong enough against all these claims of him being, racist and these other things, right? And not disassociating himself strongly enough from these groups which Trump won't do because they're very loyal to him. And that's one of his, tragic flaws, like in a Greek tragedy, right? Like his, things that will end up being his undoing. And he's doing it again with Laura Loomer and this clown or whatever it is. He's giving the left this ability to talk about him, especially for these swing states where these few votes can make a difference. Again, voting's voting. I mean, we know it's rigged, but just in terms of the narrative itself.
He was convicted of participating in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Also, according to NPR, he has twice spoken to the former president's Bedminster Golf Club. Again, according to NPR, one was a fundraiser for a group that supports Capitol riot defendants. This is a video message from the former president that played to the event.
I just want to tell you that we're with you, and our hearts are with you, our soul is with you, and we are with you, and it's going to work out.
According, again, to NPR's report, this is one of the people the former president was referring to.
So one of the things that was, just when Trump jumped the shark, so he became just a piece of shit, right? Because I really like Trump. He was my favorite president as a character in what I call the show. But the way he got worked at the end of his presidency on COVID, and I've said this over and over again. But this big thing that happened in January, he got worked on it, right? Clearly they were hoping for something like this. And I don't know if he was an active participant where he's reading from the script and he's totally conscious of this and he's just playing a part, which makes him a real piece of shit because of his, the enthusiasm he has for his cult-like followers. And he's a Judas goat leading these sheep to slaughter. But we know the big event in January, had he not done that, there wouldn't have been all these court cases. There wouldn't be all this thought of him being an insurrectionist, all these ways that the left has been able to label him. And they're still beating this guy with it, right? Like Trump would probably be a shoo-in had he just walked away from, realized he was screwed. There's that tweet I read all the time from December, when he says, what type of way is this to run a country? Sometimes in life, you're screwed. And Fox screwed him, and the Supreme Court screwed him. And, whatever happened there, the election was rigged long before he even, Trump even ran for president. These elections. And sometimes things just don't go your way. But Trump, whined like a little bitch, and he did all the stuff that he did. And now it's costing him, right? And again, I'm not saying Trump's, I'm not rooting for a Trump victory. I'm just talking about both these pieces of shit, right? And, how they both suck in their particular ways. And, he would be so much better off had he not done what he did and those people did what they did, right, the Trumpers, because it didn't help. Because Joe Biden still ended up being president. So it didn't reverse the election. What did it do? It hurt Trump then, and it continued to hurt him, and now it's hurting him now, right? And he's still doing the same old stuff. This thing with the Haitian cat thing, the dog and cat thing, the pet thing. It's the same thing. They just keep on, he keeps on handing them talking points. Certainly the Project 2025 thing, they're just, I can't imagine he's not a part of it. Like, is he that stupid that he just keeps on doing these things on his own? That he's unconscious of what he's doing. And he just keeps on feeding them what they need. And that's why I want the guy to go away. Like, even more than Kamala. Like, I can ignore Kamala for 4 years. But Trump just needs to leave. It's time for him to go. Because this kind of stupidity. And they're always going to work it in some way. It's always going to come back to hurt either us in the truth community or America in general. And they're going to change things like they did with the gender thing and all that stuff. Because Trump is such a great villain for them. And he just walks into these things and makes a pathway for, like he's making a path for Kamala Harris to win the election. Trump is, completely carving a path for her to win the election with this kind of stupid bullshit.
Geese are in the park, in the lake, and even walking off with their pets. My dog's been taken. My dog's been stolen.
On Thursday, Springfield was forced to close its town hall and elementary school after receiving a bomb threat. The city's mayor telling the Springfield News Sun that the threat included complaints about the Haitian migrants in the city.
Literally a bomb threat. This is how dangerous his rhetoric is, as ridiculous as it may be. It's also dangerous and unfounded. NBC's Garrett Hake with that report.
So the first report was from Anderson Cooper. I think that was Wednesday night or Thursday night, and this is from Friday morning, yesterday, I think. You know, when he keeps on just piling on, like his stupidity. Like, stop talking about it. Like, you don't know. He just, is totally irresponsible. Like, talk about how, and when I first started make videos here like this, and I was doing what a lot of truthers did, and I was just regurgitating what other people were saying in the truth community without checking it for myself. And I was saying things were factual when they weren't, proven factually. And that's really a plague amongst you right-wing truthers. You just repeat things you don't know shit about. You heard it on the internet, it sounded kind of right, and then you just say it. And like in the way that the climate has gone and disinformation, you have to be more responsible. Like, if you want to be better than the mainstream media, then don't do shit like that, right? So I started making a distinction between what was fact and what was speculation. And I started seeing through these, disinformation campaigns and how much they plague the truth community. And, I'm just, I have this video about the big event in September that talks about that. Things that people believed. And then when I told them, yeah, that's not true, like when I did research into it, like thermite, they went off. They went crazy because they don't have the flexibility to realize they've been bullshitted by the people in the truth community. There's a lot of bullshit in the truth community as much as there is in the mainstream media. And Trump is completely irresponsible. Like, that's not a good thing to be when you have, you're responsible for your audience. And your audience is going to go off on people, I mean, maybe these bomb threats are real in Springfield, maybe they're not, but they totally could be. Because Trump has crazy supporters, and now they're up in arms about Springfield and these Haitian people. What if somebody goes and, goes off on some of these, or they stage something like that, right? All of a sudden there's these Haitian people that are, being victimized because of this stuff. Trump's just got this big, stupid mouth. He doesn't care about how his words are feeling, and he knows he's lying. He knows he's just making things up, but he doesn't care because he's got an audience that just feasts on this stuff. And so, like, he's just a real piece of shit. So this is where we really get into this stuff here. Before Trump, neo-Nazis pushed false claims about Haitians as part of a hate campaign. An extreme group that marched in Springfield, Ohio, and demonized Haitians immigrants saw Trump's mention of baseless rumors at the debate as a victory. This is what real power looks like. And so, again, this is the kind of company that Trump's going to be associated with because, these Haitian people, whatever they are, good, bad, or different, whatever kind of people they are coming from a war-torn country, a country that's a mess, and they've been brought to America. And they've been dumped in this community of Springfield, Ohio. And whatever's going on there with them, they are, some of their stuff is beyond their control, right? And there's going to be fear when you have a city that used to be 80,000 people, but now 60,000, and then you make it 80,000 again with 20,000 immigrants. The people in the city are going to be freaked out, right? Everyone would be. Like, if they dump 20,000 people in your small town, if you're living in a suburb, or in a city near you, like if you're living in a certain area in a city, and all of a sudden there's 20,000 immigrants, people who are, impoverished, and, God knows what they're coming from and what kind of people they are, there's going to be some criminal element. And so it's already a bad situation, right, for the people there. Trump is talking about going there now, right, which we'll get into in a second here. But let's look at this.
Thank you.
Tonight, growing fallout over one of the most talked about moments of the debate.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats.
Former President Trump spreading unfounded claims that members of the growing Haitian population in Springfield, Ohio, are abusing pets. City officials say there's no evidence of that. Mr. Trump's running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, first spread the baseless accusations on social media earlier this week.
Okay, so there's that. We're going to get into, the Laura Lumer thing, because this is a big part of that. It just exploded. Springfield woman claims she never meant to spark false rumors about Haitians. The woman behind an early Facebook post that helped spark baseless rumors about Haitians eating pets told NBC News that she feels for the immigrant community. It says here, the woman behind an early Facebook post spreading harmful baseless claim. The local pets, la 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 la. Regrets the fallout. It just exploded into something I didn't mean. Erica Lee, a Springfield resident, told NBC News on Friday. Lee recently posted on Facebook about a neighbor's cat that went missing, adding that the neighbor told Lee she thought the cat was the victim of an attack by her Haitian neighbors. NewsGuard, a media watchdog that monitors for misinformation online, found that Lee had been among the first people to publish a post on social media about the rumor, screenshots of which circulated online. And so, again, they could be eating cats, right? But this isn't factual. And if you're going to accuse groups of people, like now Haitians are going to be known for being cat eaters. I mean, that's just fact. Like, that's what's happened here, right? And that's a fucked up thing to do. Like, there's no benefit, long-term benefit for Trump. I mean, this is just the bullshit du jour, right? This is just the thing they're going to cover for this week. It'll come back up occasionally. And, he's still talking about it. And the Democrats are certainly going to talk about it. But Trump doesn't care about these people. He doesn't care about the residents of Springfield. He doesn't care about their cats and pets. And neither do the Democrats. But these Haitians now are forever going to be, some people are always going to be like, yeah, those motherfuckers eat cats, right? Like, that's just how it is. And that's a fucked up thing to do. Like, it's just a messed up thing to do. You don't do that to people, right? You don't treat people like that. That's why Trump's a real piece of shit. He's like a worthless piece of shit. Because if they don't eat cats, and if they eat cats, it's because they're starving, right? People who eat cats and eat rats and eat, all kinds of bugs or whatever it is because they don't have frickin' a cattle industry, or they don't have other forms of protein, right? Like, when you start eating your cats, that's usually a bad thing that's happening to your country. Isn't like, oh my God, it's a delicacy. And people are saying they're Santeria, or, this is part of their religion, they're eating cats. I mean, all these people are suddenly experts on Haitians and their diets, right? I'm getting these comments from people. Like, you don't know. I don't know. We don't know that much about them. I mean, I probably have more experience with Haitian people from living in Florida and, and being in the Virgin Islands with island people and these things. I mean, these islands are all different. They have different cultures. But, I understand a little bit about their culture. But now every one of these people, many of them are responsible citizens, are going to be known as pet eaters, right? And not just them, because people won't be able to distinguish them from other people. It's the same thing that happened to all, Indian people, Eastern Indian people after the big event in 2001. And like people couldn't distinguish between Indians and Muslims and, Middle Eastern people and all this hate and, stupidity that exists in the ignorant masses. And so, that's why Trump's a true piece of shit. But then there's this here.
Not do another debate. Some of your own Republican allies have come out and said that you missed the mark. That you missed.
No. Excuse me. Most of my Republican allies had said I was great in the debate. You're just like a lot of other people at Fox. Well, why don't you say? So
Fox has screwed him. He's saying that people at Fox were saying he lost. And when all the people say it, I mean, Fox should have, like Fox always would have said in the past that the Republican won, no matter what. You went to Fox, they were going to say the Republican won. You went to CNN and MSNBC, they used to be better, and they'd be a little bit more realistic, but Fox was always all in for the Republicans. They've never been that way for Trump, and they want to screw him now, right?
Most 94% of the Republicans said I did phenomenally in the debate. Some said that I could have been tougher. I don't know how I could have been tougher when I said he's the worst.
You could have said they eat salamanders and geckos.
President, and she is the worst vice president in the history of our country. 94% of the Republicans, and the only one that wouldn't, maybe a Mitt Romney or somebody like that. But we've gotten great praise for the debate, and based on the polls, like Rasmussen being up 6 today, the first poll out, based on the polls, obviously I did well in the debate. Also, based on the debate polls, where I sometimes had, in one case, 92% win. So, look, you come from Fox. You shouldn't play the same game as everybody else. Go ahead.
Your Republican colleagues or your allies who are concerned about your close relationship with Laura Lumer?
Well, I don't know what they would say. Laura's been...
So Laura Lumer got off the plane with them. And I will get into her because she's another piece of shit, right? A real piece of shit for the truth community because she's not a truther, but she has some similar beliefs, one of these fake truthers that does damage to the truth community.
a supporter of mine, just like a lot of people are supporters, and she's been a supporter of mine. She speaks very positively of the campaign. I'm not sure why you asked that question, but Laura is a supporter. I don't control Laura. Laura has to say what she wants. She's a free spirit. Well, I don't.
Free spirit.
I don't know. I mean, look, I can't.
Otherwise, a piece of shit.
Tell Laura what to do. Laura's a supporter. I have a lot of supporters, but I don't know what exactly you're referring to. That's okay. Yeah, please. I just don't know. Laura's a supporter. I don't know. She is a strong person. She's got strong opinions, and I don't know what she said, but that's not up to me. She's a supporter. Please.
Traveling with you on your plane.
Okay, a lot of people do. It's a very big plane.
With you. She made racist remarks about your opponent. She also espoused conspiracy theories about 9/11. Do you disavow?
So these conspiracy theories about 9/11 is, ties into my video. The difference between being a real truther and being someone like her, right, who cherry picks the things that she believes in that aren't the official story, because she's really pro-Israel. We'll get into that in a bit.
Those remarks.
Well, I have to see what the remarks are. You're telling me for the first time we're here discussing the destruction of San Francisco.
She was the one that was attributed to really promote this dog and cat eating thing, right? And that, she's the one that they're fingering for this thing, the mainstream media. And then Trump has her on his plane, which makes no sense at all, because the people that listen to her are already going to vote for him. Like the people who are fans of hers already, like you're going after the wrong group, right? You have your supporters. And the more that they know about Kamala, even if they dislike Trump, even some of these hardcore Republican truther type people who, have turned on Trump a little bit, he seems to be going after truthers. And, the truthers that who are likely to vote for Trump are totally going to vote for Trump because Kamala Harris freaks them out. It's just, they're going to vote against Kamala Harris even if they've soured on Trump. He doesn't have to win those people back. He's got to find a way to win the people who are undecided, and those people aren't truthers, right? Those, truthers aren't. If you're an undecided truther, you're like, I'm not going to vote. It's stupid to vote, right? Like if you're not going to vote for this guy and you're a truther, you're certainly not going to vote for Kamala, and so you're just not going to vote, right? Because you realize it's a left-right paradigm. So the people he has to win over are moderate, somewhat conservative people who don't really like him, but might vote for him unless Kamala Harris rocks their world, and he's just failing at that miserably.
Francisco and California by a person that's running for president. So I don't even know what you're talking about. I do know that she may have said something based on what you're telling me, but I don't know what she said. But I'll go take a look and I'll put out a statement later on. But I really don't know. Please.
President, Springfield, Ohio is experiencing a migrant crisis. Will you
Yes.
an event there to show the media what's actually happening, maybe a town hall?
Well, we could, and maybe we'll do that. Where are you from? That's good. Very good. They're doing a very good job. Yeah, that's very good. No, I will, maybe Springfield, maybe Aurora, maybe both. We'll go there. I can say this. We will do large deportations from Springfield, Ohio. Large deportations. We're going to get these people out. We're bringing them back to Venezuela.
So this is the thing I want to show you. What the fuck are you talking about, you piece of shit? They're not Venezuelan. He doesn't even know what kind of people they are. The Aurora thing is Venezuelan gangs. There's this, idea that the Venezuelan gang has taken over, an apartment complex. And again, this is making its way around the QB-style 4chan, conservative networks. Of course, now it's making it into the mainstream social media. And it may or may not be true, but it goes along. This thing helps Trump, to have this idea that there's all these criminals and these gangs coming in and they're eating pets and, the Haitians are eating pets. But for him to say that we're going to deport them back to Venezuela, well, first, Venezuela said that they'd kill anybody that comes back there. And so how are you going to get them into the country? That's a false claim. You can't deport people to it's like, what if, people from, there's all these Americans in Mexico and they just sent them back, 2 million Americans having to be taken in right away, right? Like, these countries are already impoverished, and they don't want these people back. Like, they want to get rid of people, and they have closed borders. And so how are you going to get them? Plus, you have to, like, it's not like you can just drive a busload of them, from Colorado all the way down through Mexico and then all the way down to Venezuela. It's at the very base of South America. Venezuela is as far away from America as, in terms of the southern border as you can get. And so you're going to fly them in? Like, how are you going to get rid of all these people? 11 million people. Like, it's just something that can't happen. He's making up shit that he can't do just to appease these people. But to not even know that the people they're talking about are Haitian and not Venezuelan, and some of those Haitians started to arrive in Springfield back in 2018 when you were president, this what makes him a real, piece of shit. And, he's the only guy doing press conferences, and Kamala Harris, who has a lot to answer for, won't. Like, these are your options, right? Kamala Harris is being hidden away, and a guy that you wish they would hide away, right, who just can't get enough of them being in front of the microphone. So this is from The Hill, right?
Two top allies of former President Trump are warring on social media about a bigoted social media post mocking Vice President Kamala Harris's Indian heritage, exposing fault lines within the Republican candidate's inner circle. Right-wing activist Laura Lumer, a former congressional candidate with a lengthy history of anti-Muslim comments, and Georgia Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene have been engaged in a war of words on the social media platform X, with Greene calling Lumer appalling and extremely racist for her recent comments. Lumer quoted a Sunday Post in which Harris was talking about her Indian heritage and said that if she wins the election, the White House will smell like curry and White House speeches will be facilitated via a call center, and American people will only be able to convey their feedback through a customer satisfaction. And
so Laura Lumer, we'll get to her in a second. She's Jewish. And this is just really stupid. I mean, it's not only racist and all the things that you don't want. And, when people are in a group that complains about being marginalized and she's standing up for her, Jewish people, you don't want to start getting into ethnic stereotypes, right? But in this case, it's really stupid because Kamala Harris is barely an Indian. Her mom was not a traditional Indian woman. I mean, at least in terms of what Kamala Harris says about her. But if you know Indian people, the ones that come from India, they have Indian food and they wear Indian clothes, most of them, and they hang out with other Indian people, and they carry as much of their Indian life from India here in America. And they can do it because there's Indian stores and, there's some Indian culture here. It's a small percentage of the American population. But if you know the kids who grow up, if you watch the family or you talk to the family, you see the families of these people from India, just like every other immigrant family, the kids grow up American. I mean, they grow up with some Indian influences, and Kamala Harris clearly is that. She's not really Indian. And so it's just a stupid thing to say. It's not, anybody with half a brain know that's not the case. I mean, she's married to a Jewish guy. I'm sure they don't eat Indian food all that much. I'm sure Kamala doesn't cook. And, there was that thing she did with Mindy Keeling. But again, she's barely, she's second generation Indian. And it's just one of those stupid things that only dumb people say. Like, only people pandering to dumb people would put out there, right? But let's go to her Twitter here. So I've seen some of her tweets. Like, I kind of have a sense of her. Investigative journalist, piece of shit, fake truther. Founder of Loomer, host of Lumer Unleashed, former Project Veritas operative, these pieces of shit over there. America First, feisty Jewish fire recipient queen. She's so pro-Israel, and she's anti-Muslim, and she's pro-genocide, and she's a real piece of shit, right? And you can't be a truther and be pro-Israel and pro-genocide. You can't. Like, you just can't. And so all these fake truthers that are pushing for that, all these things that she's a part of. Donald Trump did nothing wrong t-shirt. So she's a big Trumper, but she's not helping Trump because the people that she would reach out to are already voting for Trump, or if they're not, then they're not going to vote for Trump. Like, they're whatever they are. But this is one of these fake truthers, which I'll get into in a bit. I'm going to come back to that. So she said this: I denounced Marjorie Taylor Greene 2 years ago. I don't want the support of a woman who goes around saying Jews control the world with space lasers, and a woman who used her campaign funds to pay for the Yay 2024 domain the same day Donald Trump had dinner with Kanye West and is now under investigation by the FEC. Marjorie Taylor Greene sold out to Kevin McCarthy. It's an honor to be denounced by this disloyal woman who has accomplished nothing during her time in Congress. And Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't speak for MAGA. This kind of infighting shows that you're completely fucked, right? This is not winning. Like, this is like what losers do. You know, when marriages fall apart, when teams collapse, you know, sports teams collapse, when businesses collapse, this is what happens. The people who are, you know, people get cannibalistic and start eating, you know, their own, going after each other. And, you know, Trump is fighting for his life. And this is why it's hard for me to believe that he'd pull this woman, you know, roll this woman out there. She's so, like, I mean, she calls herself a queen, right? She's just a nasty, you know, what Trump would call a nasty woman. Divisive, and just sends the wrong message to the undecided voters and gives the left, the left-leaning media and Kamala Harris something to harp on. And you already had the issue with the whole thing with the eating the dogs and stuff, and it's just a bad look for him. And now this, right? Like, you know, I mean, things are not going well in Trump land. So here comes Marjorie Taylor Greene, you know, this skank off here.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. How you doing? We all saw your back and forth with Laura Lumer. Do you have concerns about her access to Donald Trump right now?
I have concerns about her rhetoric and her hateful tone. To me, many of the comments that she makes and how she attacks Republicans like me, many other Republicans that are strong supporters of President Trump, I think they're a huge problem. And that doesn't represent MAGA as a whole. It doesn't represent
MAGA.
Who we are as Republicans. And, you know, I typically try to ignore her post, but someone had sent me that post about Kamala Harris, and it bothered me so much. And you know my personality, everyone knows I'm outspoken, and I just felt like it was time to call it out. I think it's wrong. We're not a party.
It's just not wrong. I mean, it's racist and it sucks. Of course, this guy is Indian who's interviewing her. But it's what losers do. Trump having association with these people who are divisive and can be used as weapons against him. And the same thing with Project 2025. I got to believe that Trump is purposefully giving the left cover here, which means he's being scripted and handled by these people, because otherwise if he didn't do the big event in January and he didn't do some of the stupid stuff before that, he would have won the last election. If he didn't do Operation Warp Speed and didn't shut down the economy and he didn't get worked on all these different things, the way he handled the debate with Joe Biden, saying that Joe Biden was going to be drooling on himself, and Joe Biden had some lucid moments, and so everyone said Joe Biden rocked the debate only because, you know, there were so low expectations for him. And then the thing with the dogs now and Laura Loomer, it's hurting him, right? This is not the kind of news that you want in terms of the coverage. And now it has infighting amongst these dopes, the skank off that he has. Like, it's just what losers do. Like, I can't imagine, you know, the 2025 thing is such a loser thing. Like, it just makes no sense at all why they would do that. So it has to be disinformation, or Trump's a part of that. And like he's been told, you have to give Kamala and them, it's this, you know, it's like WWE things where you play a villain because it's all scripted. You know, I have to assume that that's what's happening here, that Trump can no longer be considered some organic dope that they just work. Because, of course, the whole thing with Band-Aid Gate and Ketchup Gate, I mean, Trump's not opposed to lying and deceiving his fans because he does it all the time, his cult, right? But in terms of all these other things that he does that seem to be stupid things and mistakes, I think it's more now that he's doing these things because they told him to do it. And he's aware of what's going to happen, you know, and I want to get into the Truth Social here in a bit. Actually, I don't do that. I'm editing, so I'll say it here. Well, first of all, when Marjorie Taylor Greene is the voice of reason, when you agree with her, you know it's like effed up. This Laura Loomer is a disaster. But I turned on CNN this morning, and I didn't tape it, and I kind of regret it a little bit. But they're talking about Truth Social, and it isn't making any money, but it's going to go public, and it has like a $2 billion valuation. Now, and the guy said the stock goes up from like $6 to $80. Like it's one of those fluctuating stocks that people will buy, and then it'll go up, and like something like GameStop, and depending on whether Trump wins the election or not, like he's going to make that go public. He owns most of the stock in it. I had said before the election, this was back when they were censoring all the Twitter wasn't owned by Elon Musk, and they were censoring the stuff around the election, right? And all the stuff that's Trump got he got shadow banned. He got not a shadow ban. He was deplatformed. And I said, before the election, he should have started something like Truth Social. It came a little bit too late because his voice was stolen from him, during that process. Remember, with all the stuff that happened, which is probably for good measure because of all the disastrous things he said and did at that time. But anyways, like he's got to walk away with a couple $2 billion of assets possibly, or access to that when this company goes public. And if he wins the election, he refuses to deal with the mainstream media. I mean, Fox has even turned on him now, and he could just communicate through Truth Social, and the thing's going to be worth like billions of dollars. So we'll see how that all plays out. But it's going to have its public offering pretty soon. But anyways, let's get back to it. So then there's this here.
Of the ledger, and talk about the fact that some figures in Donald Trump's orbit are concerned about someone who's been traveling with him lately. I'm talking about Laura Loomer, a far-right conspiracy theorist. She's called herself pro-white nationalism and a proud Islamophobe. These are things that this woman who was with Donald Trump has said. And yesterday, she was with Trump at 9/11 ceremonies in New York and Pennsylvania. This is someone who pushed a conspiracy that the attacks were an inside job with Donald Trump at Ground Zero, or at the air.
There she is getting off the plane, and she just looks like a real piece of shit. Like just, like someone you go, oh my gosh, if she was going to be cast in a movie, she'd play a witch. Right there, she would be like, all right, is there a witch role in this movie? Then her agent would be contacting the studio. Like the agent would, have a bunch of pictures of her looking like a witch so that she could get those roles when they come up.
Areas in and around the 9/11 ceremonies.
Like, look.
Loomer was also seen getting off Trump's plane in Philadelphia ahead of the debate, and some blame her for putting stories like the immigrants eating pets lie into his head. She's even too extreme for Marjorie Taylor Greene, who isn't exactly a poster child for political correctness. Greene responded to a racist post that Loomer put up about Kamala Harris. Greene wrote, "This is appalling and extremely racist. It does not represent who we are as Republicans or MAGA. This does not represent President Trump. This type of behavior should not be tolerated ever." Now, Trump aides have tried for years to keep Loomer away from him. Obviously, that is not working. Lou, what are you hearing from your sources about this?
There's a lot of concern.
Okay, so that's how this is being covered. It doesn't do anything for him because the people, like I said, I don't have to say that again. Okay, so I was going to put this in the beginning of the introduction when I was talking about the truth community and all those things. And I forgot, this is one of the key points, but I'm glad I forgot because I got a great comment I want to respond to that feeds into this. But what I was saying before about the truth community and these various people who you don't want them on your team, and they're not really on your team, and they're more your enemy than the people who seem to be your enemy, right? They're truthers that put out active disinformation, and they're all these things. And there was a period of time where Alex Jones wasn't nearly as bad as he is now. He used to have quality guests on his show. His show was more organic. But then he went into we hired a lot of staff, and he got his own studio, and he now had a lot of expenses. And you can see at that time he became more of a public figure. He had the disastrous debate interview with Piers Morgan, where he came out like just crazy and just all the things, right? You know, that there's this narrative that they're trying to create, they were trying to create back then, that all people who posted truther stuff were crazy right-wing nut jobs. And Alex Jones gave him that. Like every time he was on one of these interviews, the Megyn Kelly interview, now Megyn Kelly's more of a truther, doing her own, podcast and things, right-wing truther. But Alex Jones realized for him to carry his expenses, he had to go to the far right. The show that I do here, I have a microphone that lasts, maybe a year to 6 months. That's like $80. I have a good Apple computer, and whatever internet things I have, and things that I have in terms of, I report on shows and whatever it is, right? There's things that I have that are, part of what I do here, internet, and that's about it, right? My expenses are limited to, I don't have to pay a salary, and I don't have to do any of these things, and so by doing that, I don't have to have a huge tent, and I don't have to pander to people. And pandering to people is when you stop becoming a truther, because then you have to, the way people are, and people are so sucky about, people don't want to change. People are so rigid in their beliefs, and they want somebody to tell them that their beliefs are great, and they're great, and they don't have to change, and the rest of the world sucks, and it's not your fault, and there's nothing you can do about it. And victim consciousness runs so strongly in our culture, where you're a helpless victim being subjected to a world full of shitty other people, and you're not the problem, and you have to wait for everyone else to change and make it up to your level. And that's what most people want to hear. And that's what Trump gives them, and that's what Alex Jones gives them, and that's what Laura Loomer gives her group of people. It's these different segments of the population, because these people are takers, and they want lots. They need lots, and they have big lifestyles, and all these people. Kamala Harris. I mean, the way all these people operate is that they find the biggest. They find the things that the most people want to hear in the group that they're pandering to, and they give those people whatever they want, and they get a lot back from those people. Right? They're luring them in so they can succubus off the group of the people. Right? That could use those people to prop them up. And I don't have to do that because I have something to offer. And unfortunately or fortunately, most people don't see what I have to offer, but there's something I have to offer here. That's not necessarily my thing. The idea that God's inside of you isn't my thing. It's not my idea. It's not exclusive to me. But I'm one of the few people who know about it, and the Sajmark system. The Sajmark system to me is the answer and solution that was given by God years and years ago to help you people change, because people have to change. There's an intervention going on now, and if you don't see that all of us have to change. We have to change everything about ourselves, our habits, our consciousness, what we think life is about, how we go about living life, our connection to God internally, which is the biggest part of it. And most people don't want change at all, because I've been in the change business for a number of years. I started taking psychology classes during my second, I had 3 failed attempts at college. And I took a psychology class in my first attempt at college, and I really liked it. I was interested in it. And then I took more psychology classes in my second attempt at college. But I didn't see myself being a therapist or a counselor, because I'm just, not easy to talk to. I'm not, interested in that kind of relationship. And I was never good at that, right? I was okay, for the people that really, if people wanted to change, then sure, I'm great. But if they don't, I wasn't so good. But then I, went to graduate school, was getting a master's in counseling. And during the program of graduate school, you were supposed to go into therapy. And you were also, we had weekend classes, and they were experiential. And we experienced each model of counseling, right? As, we would act as both clients and counselors. It was kind of a good program in different ways. A lot of liberal people. It was in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where there's a lot of people who are liberal, trust funders people. Some people are just going back, older people. There are a lot of older divorced women there, that were in their 40s and 50s, 60s, that kind of place. And, there was that element. A lot of LGBTQ people were in my, were part of and mostly liberal people. And, some of the people I liked, and, I liked the program and I got some out of it. Before that, I dated a girl that, I told that Virgin Island story. And when I came back, she got into therapy. And then I got into therapy with the same person. And, there was some change that happened. I can look at periods of my life where I changed internally. I adjusted my habits. I became a better person. I matured. And things that were inside of me I didn't know were inside of me, good things mostly, were pulled out, abilities and, things like that. Like you become a parent and, like most people just think when you're a kid that your parents were always like they are, right? You don't understand that they were once selfish brats like yourself. And then they had to learn to be parents and be selfless and think about, some of the things kick in. I mean, especially for women when they get pregnant. But some things just kick in from the circumstance. But you have to pull this stuff out of you. The parent has to be pulled out of you, right? Inside every person there's a farmer because your ancestors were farmers. And if you had past life, you've done some sort of farming. There's, many people were hunters and things like this, hunter-gatherers and parents. There's things that, that are just there inside every living animal or being that are a part of their ancestral history. And some of it's instinctual, some of it's automatic, and sometimes you have to, it has to be pulled out of you through a learning process, right? And so, I had these periods of change and, going through learning about myself when I was, learning about psychology and learning about looking inside and these things. But the counseling model and the psychological model, it doesn't really do much for people who don't want to change, right? I mean, you have to be somewhat desperate and really want to change. And then it's a long, grueling process. And it's limited. And so when I was doing the Sajmark system, and I was doing the Sajmark system while I was getting my master's degree in counseling, and I saw how much better the Sajmark system was in terms of helping people change. Because there was a natural cleansing of the samskaras and impressions you had in your system that has like untold value. Like it's hard to evaluate how much it works for you, but you just feel it working. It happens automatically. And then also connecting to God, it pulls out, a higher sense of yourself. And the amount of change that I've gone through doing the Sajmark system is like 1,000,000 times more than I did under the counseling system, right? And in terms of what I need to become, I'm just like in the early stages of it, right? There's so much more to do than I've already accomplished or the system has already helped me accomplish, right? So I'm a true believer in the system and the idea of connecting to God. Like it is, by far the best system that's ever been invented. And, of course, I don't know all of them, but just because of my understanding of the history of spiritual movements, in terms of spiritual evolution and becoming the best version of yourself, there's never been a system like this because of the need of the time, because people drastically have to evolve. And so I believe this 100% to be the answer. And whether other people do or whether people are able to feel it or experience it, that's not my problem. Because all I have to do is talk about it in some way, and then I've done my duty. I've done, my, little bit to contribute to it. I've put it out there that this thing exists, something that people didn't know about, and that it's really helped me. It's been transformative, and I've seen it help other people. I've seen, some of the value of the system. But even in that, I've talked about how it turned into the Heartfulness cult, and there's people who are wonderful people, saintly people, a lot of them Indians, but people in the system who are just higher developed souls, many of them much better people than I am. But they couldn't navigate they were having trouble navigating this issue with the once pure system that was all about connecting people to God, changing into a dysfunctional, like pseudo cult. Only it's like trying to be a cult, but it's too stupid. The leader is too stupid, dodgy. And so all these people are failing at this one little problem. And so, there's lots of people in the system that love the system and have experienced change, but I don't get along with them or don't really, I don't feel like other than the system itself have very much in common with them, right? And so it isn't like it's rocking it, even for the people who do it. I mean, the people who do it experience tremendous amount of evolution and spiritual gain, but even they are, falling short of what needs to be done now to be a functional person in this time of collapse and crisis. So the issue isn't the systems, it's the people. Because psychology works for people who want to change, right? And spirituality works for people who want to change. And there's lots of things that work. You know, if you really want to change, you'll find a way. And that's exhibited by my YouTube channel. Like, you know, I can be off-putting, and, you know, there's people, I can see why people don't like me, and there's reasons why people don't want to listen, but there should be more value in the fact that I'll tell the truth. I'm not pandering to people. You know, these candidates, and as much as the election is real and not real, or, you know, whatever amount it's rigged and whatever amount that voting and the polls play into that, there are these small groups of people, like I said over and over again, who suck and can't make a decision. They think they have to vote for somebody, and they think their vote is some, you know, it's like their virginity or something that they're guarding with their life, right? Like, you know, like it's some spectacular, you know, for them to vote for you, it's some, you know, gift from God, right? These people who are withholding their votes. And they kind of, you know, they know who Trump is. And they're not going to change their opinion on Trump. I mean, maybe their opinion changed a little bit when Biden failed. And so, you know, they thought there was an alternative. And so they're looking for a reason not to vote for Trump. And Kamala isn't really giving them that. And so, like, there's a failure here, but these people are the worst. And I don't have to give two shits about these people. Like, I don't have to care about these people at all. And that's what's great about what I do here, because, like, I have something of value to people who have the ability to change. Like, I don't want people here who don't think about changing and evolving and becoming something better themselves. Because, you know, I mean, it's not like I don't want them, but usually they're going to end up being mad at me or, you know, upset because they're going to be butthurt about this thing or that thing. But the people that I am catering to are the, you know, rare people out there that are looking for some evolution and looking to change and better themselves in some way. Because that's the only group of people that matter. Everybody else is fucked. Like, everyone else who's locked in and rigid and incapable of looking at themselves, and they want to be a part of a group think and a, you know, group consciousness and egregore of, you know, this right wing or left wing and Democrats and Republicans, and, you know, they want to be part of a group that says you're okay the way you are, and, you know, we're all like here, and here's the enemy. This is the deep state or Trump or Biden. You know, Kamala Harris is the enemy, and, you know, we're the heroes, and, you know, all those people are fucked. They're completely fucked. If you're one of those people, you're fucked. You don't even know how fucked you are, because, like, there's no place for you in the future. Humanity has to change drastically, and right now, you know, it's hard for people to do it, but there'll be a time where people be forced to change just to survive, and that's part of the Sajmark teaching, that this time is coming. You know, all this stuff like people think about end of the world and the Book of Revelation. It's really a period of a bad system ending, and people having to, you know, be forced to pull out of themselves a higher part of them, you know, a more evolved part of them, or they won't be able to survive. And if they can't do that, humanity will be wiped from the face of this earth, and there'll be something else in its place, right? And what happens to everybody's souls, you know, I don't know. That's a little more complicated question. But there are a lot of people, like I say over and over again, when the population is reduced, they won't be able to be born back in here, and they're not going to go to a higher place because they haven't earned it. And so they're going to be stuck in some, you know, like limbo, like some purgatory, you know, waiting for another opportunity, and or going to a worse place or coming back down as animals or something, you know, less than. But either way, you know, those people are all like, they have almost no value because they're unwilling to participate in the thing that needs to happen based on a divine mandate. And so, you know, to tie it into this thing with Laura Loomer and Trump and, you know, Marjorie Taylor Greene, like, these are all just, you know, people spinning their wheels, making the same mistakes over and over again, whether they're scripted or not. And, you know, they all have to bow before somebody. You know, they're all pandering to somebody. And when you do that, you betray yourself, right? Like, you don't have a, you know, there's no sense of, like, you know, your own purpose, you know, outside. Like, people are wanting to tie themselves to institutions and to, you know, whatever it is, so that they can feel safe and secure and, you know, not have to challenge themselves to, you know, expect more from themselves, right? And, you know, that's something that I abhor. And it's invaded the truth community now. It's kind of wrecked the truth community. You know, the essence of the truth community should be this, that the people running your system, the people that are in charge of the system, the organizations, generational power and wealth, are abusing you and withholding from you the true nature of who you are as a person, as a soul, your reason for being, your true path here. And they have using your miseducation and your indoctrination to turn you into servants and slaves and perpetuating a demonic pathway, a demonic way of life that you're fully engaged in. And you never know what you're doing, why you're here, where you came from. Your true history has been withheld from you. And so finding the truth would be what you would then want to do. Okay, you realize that you've been screwed over, so what is the truth? And that has to do with God, and it has to do with confronting your religion, your piece of shit religion that has lied to you since the day you were born, and all these other things. It's mostly about your relationship to your soul and divinity, and the history that about all of that, right? But instead, people are like getting into politics and trying to change the people who are lying to them. But how are you going to change them from what they are now? You're going to replace them with people who don't know the truth, right? You're all still indoctrinated in the system, and you haven't figured out the truth. Once you figured out you've been lied to, the next step is to figure out the truth, which for me, I was lucky enough to have that already because I was already doing the meditation, the Sajmarg meditation, and I was experiencing this wonderful gift of the divinity within, right? Being aware and having a relationship with the divinity within me, which each person has, and each person has a best spiritual version of them, a version of their soul, like the highest, a pure reflection of their soul. And your soul has a path and a reason for being, and if you can connect with that, part of yourself and the divinity within you, it can guide you to make the right decisions and guide you along that path. And everybody else is like a hamster on the wheel. And so, that's the value of what is, offered here in terms of the description and also the Gratefullness meditation channel. And so all this other stuff is just like, people who now say, all right, we've been lied to, but I don't know the truth, but I want to replace the people that are lying to us. Well, yeah, you better figure out people who know the truth before you do that. You better figure out the truth before you replace it with a bunch of other people who are just as bad as liars, right? People who just want to, have that position, and they just want to switch places with these people that have been abusing their humanity for, so many years. And so in that, I got this wonderful comment. Let me see if I can find it. Should be the top thing here. And so the person writes this to me. I just don't get it, which is where they should have stopped. You move around many states and countries, and you always get a job and have a car. Plus, I assume you have a roof over your head. That seems like a fantasy fiction novel. You just hop around and always get a job. You are definitely not an introvert. No freaking way. And so I want to debunk this stuff. I guess this person's responding to me saying I lived in the Virgin Islands. And, why would I lie about being an introvert? Why would I lie about that? Why would I tell you I'm an introvert when I'm not, right? I just don't get it. But then, someone says I don't get it, which you don't. You don't have the capacity. I mean, I put out so much information here. It's just that you don't have the capacity to get a sense of who I am. I'm talking hours and hours every day, and I don't know how much this person's listened to me. They don't have any kind of, I don't recognize their name, but they have enough of, information where they think they can evaluate me. But you suck at it. This is why one of the ways that, I'm really good at what you're trying to do here. Even just from this small comment, I know a lot about this person because, why are you thinking out loud? This is like a private conversation for you to have to evaluate whether I'm trustworthy or not, or whatever you're trying to get to. You don't need to share this with everybody else. It's certainly not me. Telling me I'm not an introvert. Why would you say I'm bullshitting about being an introvert? Why would that be why would you have the motivation to do that? First of all, you're accusing me of lying about being an introvert because why? If introverts are so cool, like I'm secretly an extrovert. I'm secretly like just extroverted, and I've just made up this backstory of me being an introvert. Why would I do that? Like, because I'm moving around and I'm gallivanting one place after another, and so I must be extroverted to make that thing happen. And so, like, you suck at it. Like, you just suck at doing this, but still, the person keeps on going. That just seems like a fantasy fiction novel. You can't just hop around and always get a job. You are definitely not an introvert. No freaking way. I don't think you came from... I think you came from a silver spoon family, but you have obviously never struggled. Okay, my dad was a guidance counselor. And why would I make that up? And so my mom worked as a part-time as a paraprofessional. I think she had 2 years of college. I think my dad maybe had a master's degree, and I'm not sure in what, maybe education. And so he was a guidance counselor. He did it for 35 years. And so we were middle-class family, 5 kids, and I was the youngest. There was a little bit more money for me because there's a 10-year gap between me and my sister. And I've said all these things in the Journey series. I've talked about this. Again, no reason for me to make any of that stuff up. And so my grandparents, my mom's mom was a Irish orphan. She grew up in an orphanage, and she married a German guy my grandfather, who fought in 2 world wars. He volunteered at age 15 to go in the First World War. He played professional football for $10 a game, and he made the majority of his money by being a fireman. Again, not overtly wealthy. And they had a modest house in Florida. When I knew them, they retired to Florida with whatever pension, whatever GI Bill stuff they had. They certainly weren't rich. They had a small little, it used to be an army barracks house. My dad's parents, my grandfather came over from Sicily and was a barber in New Jersey. And they had a moderate house in a suburb. My grandmother never worked. She came from Albania. So where the fuck would I get a silver spoon, right? Like, where's this silver spoon in there? And so, and I've kind of said all these different things. And, I'll explain my travels in a bit because, again, this person's just making large assumptions. And this is what I'm talking about. Like, you know nothing. You suck at this. There's enough information for you to figure out the kind of person that I am. I talk about how people can't love themselves and know themselves. And that's true. Knowing yourself or whatever, but there should be some sense of how you work. And if you understand yourself and you understand life, then you can understand other people. If you have some internal process. It's not knowing your ego, but I guess you got to know your ego a little bit and your tendencies to correct them. And, if you're evolving as a person, you're growing as a person, then you can read other people because you understand, what makes you tick and to whatever extent, and then you can understand that in other people, right? And when you don't have any of that, when you're some lost person, the person's first, the first thing they said here, I don't get it. Yeah, you don't get it. You don't get anything. You don't get life. You don't get me. You don't get, you're just clueless. You're walking around making shit up because telling me I'm not an introvert and I have a silver spoon are factually incorrect. And whether other people know that or not doesn't matter to me. But I know it because I've lived my life, right? Like I've taken the Myers-Briggs test, and there's a time where I realized I was introverted. Like I didn't know I was dyslexic. I was given these tests when I was a kid. And these aren't things like, oh wow, I'm dyslexic and I'm introverted that you brag about. Like it's not like, oh, how cool are you? Like it's stupid, like just silly stuff. But like I was smart, like I was like, I'm smart, and but I couldn't learn to do handwriting. My dad and my brother have a mixture of. My dad has he writes he's dead now. He wrote some of his letters in cursive, and some of them in print. Like he'd write a word, and some of the writing would be in cursive, and some of it would be in print, right? And my dad and my brother and me have all written books. My brother's, I think, got worse handwriting than me. It's a thing. There's issues there, which people would call learning disabilities, but there's also assets there because I see the world a different place. You know, my brother, he is a different kind of a person as well. You just randomly move and get hired. How can you always find a job? You're not even female. I think that you are an extrovert. You obviously are great at interacting with people, can make almost anyone like you. Something doesn't make sense. You cannot be that kind of person, you say, and always have such an easy path in the world. Well, I haven't had such an easy path in the world. Like, you know, and I've discussed this in the Journey series. And none of the stuff that I say, there would be any benefit to me to make it up. You know, I mean, I don't, you know, I just, like, all this stuff is, yeah, of course I'm going to paint the picture of me being better or being, you know, I'm going to paint myself in a more positive light because that's what people do. And, you know, it's the way I see it, right? Everyone, you know, I'm not, I'm not the antagonist in my own story. I'm the protagonist in my own story, which is what everyone should be. You should be the protagonist, but to be that, you also have to be honest with yourself, right? So the myth that I traveled around my whole life, I'm 60 years old. So from the time I was born to the time I was 14, we lived in the same house in Connecticut. And then my parents moved to another house suburb, which we lived through my high school years. So from the time I was 14 to the time I was 18, it seems we were like there a lot longer. That seems like a place I lived. I have more memories of that place, obviously, because I was a little bit older. And then my parents moved down to Florida. We used to travel to Florida. So that was it. We would travel. Once in a while, we go to New Jersey to see my dad's relatives, and we stopped doing that. There was some kind of a falling out with him and his siblings, you know, before I was like a teenager. But when I was a kid, we used to go there. And we used to drive down to Florida, once or twice a year to see my grandparents. And that was about it, right? That was my travels. That was my, I remember I got a navigation merit badge in Cub Scouts because I, was able to read a map and I did the navigation for one of my family's trips. These stupid Cub Scout things you do. But I like to travel and I was, and I was good at it and I never really liked Connecticut, right? So my parents, I went to a year in college which my dad got me into as a guidance counselor, but it wasn't like a process I was involved in. And my parents didn't pay for my college because they didn't have money, and my dad was cheap anyway and whatever. And so I took out student loans, and I had part-time jobs. I did 1 year of college in Florida. Then my parents retired down there, and I hurt my leg. I was working security guard at night. I quit college and worked at Kmart for a while. And I just wasn't doing well. And my brother was like, why don't you come up and live with us? My brother had 3 kids, but, I paid him rent. And I had a job opening a town building and scrubbing toilets and vacuuming and doing janitor work, where I'd get up at 5 in the morning and I'd get to this town building and I'd open up, I had all the keys to that town building. I was a college kid. So I went to college where there was an opportunity for me to play basketball. And I always thought that was, my path because I was a good athlete. My family was good athletes. And, the coach of the basketball team would later tell my nephew that, I was better than the guards that he had on the team, but I was a project. And he just, he just couldn't have me on the team, which it would have been helpful if he had told me that to my face and I would have been able to, move on from that. But I had 3 or 4 part-time jobs. I worked at Wawa's and these other things. Paying my way through school and doing the things I was doing, right? So then I lived in Connecticut, I think, till I was about 24, maybe 25. I dropped out of college, and I was kind of just, lost. I worked for Poland Springs for a while, delivering water bottles and stuff like that. Drove a truck, had my own landscaping. And then one of my friends, I'd save some money, my biggest expense was partying. I didn't have health insurance for most of my life. I haven't had health insurance. I never went to a doctor. I didn't like going to doctors. I didn't go to the dentist for 10, 15 years. I just didn't do those things and didn't need to do those things. I was strong and healthy. I played a lot of sports, exercised. Eventually I learned to eat better and things like this. But for the most part, I was just, I have good genetic stock. All my grandparents lived into their 90s. I talk about this in previous videos, my parents. So then I moved to Atlanta. My best friend from high school was there. and I lived in a couple apartments there, same apartment complex, and then moved back to Connecticut after maybe about 2 years, and then went to the Virgin Islands. So, I hadn't done all that much traveling up to that point. So I was probably 26, 27 when I went to the Virgin Islands. And then, I had $1,500 or so saved from my waiting tables job. I had a good job during the summer there. I didn't have a car at that particular time. I told this story and I went to the Virgin Islands. I got 2 jobs. The thing about me getting jobs is not about me being an extrovert. Being an introvert doesn't mean you're a wallflower. Being an introvert means that you recharge by being by yourself, where other people recharge by being in groups, right? That people who seek out social situations and need to be around people. And that's where they get their energy from, is being part of a, larger group. And, oftentimes those people are, need to be the center of attention, or, they're people who are louder, right, and more social. But being an introvert doesn't mean you're antisocial. You can't talk to people, or you don't, introverts often have like more interesting things to say because they're self-reflective, right? And I have a likability factor, which I have not generated myself. It's just there. It's, but people find me interesting. And I always, whenever I interviewed for a job, if the person could give me the job, they would. Like, I do really well in interviews. I just I just naturally am good at it. It's like I don't know if it's a talent. I'm good one-on-one, and I kind of like the interviewing process. There's a time, pretty much every waiting table job I ever interviewed for, plus I had, years of experience waiting tables. And so, I interview well, and people can see, I mean, it's why people listen to me here. I have interesting things to say. I'm a good storyteller. I just don't do this stuff in large crowds, but I can if I have to. But people have always, gravitated to me, right? I have, people are, attracted to me in some way or another. People have that sort of, those sort of qualities. I must have some charisma or something. It's not something I'm conscious of, but I guess that makes, my life easier. And I wasn't really aware of it because I don't know what other people's experiences is. But when I went to an interview, I was trying to do sales. And I was dating that woman. We got back from the Virgin Islands. And there was a job where this guy was, I lived in Connecticut towards the middle of the state, towards the Hartford area. Hartford's the big capital city there. And then there was these nice places by the coast that are close to New York. The Gold Coast, there's these places by the beach, beautiful places by the ocean. And this guy had a multi-million-dollar house by the ocean, and he was like a 70-year-old guy who was selling securities to families who were, wealthy people around there. And he had built up a clientele, and he wanted to retire, but he wanted to sell his business, maybe, have he would get 20% of the whatever it is. He wanted to hand the business over to somebody who would, keep the business going, and he wouldn't have to do the work, but would receive some percentage of the, the income. And he was making a good living selling securities. And the guy loved me. He had already interviewed 9 or 10 people, and he offered the thing to me. He wanted me to do it. And I was like, I'm just not capable of selling securities to people, I mean, he thought it was somebody he would represent his company well, and that I could deal with all these rich people that he was, but I didn't understand financial instruments. I didn't take one business class, and I understand the stuff now. And from a truther perspective, but I couldn't have understood it from that. I couldn't have done that job. But, someone was completely unqualified just from the quality of my interviews. The other thing is that I really take tests well. Even if I didn't study and, I have a good memory, that's one part. But I could figure out answers of the test even if I didn't know anything about it. I did well in the SATs. I didn't do any prep work on the SATs. I've just always been able to figure out the right answer, even if I didn't know it. I could just tell by the question, and there'd be 1 or 2 choices. It'd be almost like a 50-50 type of thing, where I could narrow it down to 1 or 2 choices. I was trying to figure out a cheat code type of thing, and I was able to do that. So, there's things that I had, that were there in terms of, people liking me or whatever, but, getting a job was never something that was a problem. And the other thing is, because of my eventual spiritual path, I've always had a sense, even though I didn't fit in, and I would take risks. Like going to the Virgin Islands with $1,500 was really risky. Like if I didn't get a job and it was after the hurricane, which I didn't know, and we didn't do any research on it, and we were in kind of a bad situation. We ended up not making a lot of money there, and we limped back to America. It wasn't like, it was just, we came back with less money, and I had to go live with my brother's ex-wife and my nephews. My brother had a very contentious divorce. He left his wife over, multiple years for like a blonde woman who was like kind of crazy and a nightmare on my nephew's birthday. It was like a real dick move on his part. And, I hadn't really been close to my brother's wife. We really didn't talk much or whatever, but I reached out to her. Like I was the only person in my family to call her. And I was kind of freaked out when he left. It was like a second family to me. And so this woman I was with, she went to live, I don't know if she stayed with her parents for like a month, but we had to, I got a job immediately. I got 2 waiting table jobs when we got back. And then she got a job again as a nurse. But like we had to like crawl our way out of a bad financial situation. And, it really sucked. I mean, it was like me being a kid again. Like we had to revert back to like basically living with our families. And so, sometimes there's risks in those things. You take chances and, sometimes they don't always pan out. But what I was saying here, and it became more and more clear when I became a spiritual person, that my life was a path. And everybody's life is a path, but I became conscious of it. And there were things that were supposed to happen. And I was supposed to put the effort in where I was supposed to put the effort in. You just can't sail along just, hoping everything works out. But, you have to do what you need to do in each circumstance. But things would just work out, right? But, we lived together for a couple of years. We were engaged. And then that's a whole story in itself. And then there was me moving to Massachusetts, which is about, a couple hours away from where I lived in Connecticut. It wasn't really that big of a move. And that's where I started doing the meditation. And then, I wanted to get out of that area. Like I never liked the Connecticut, New England area. And so just this opportunity opened up for me to go to New Mexico. And that was kind of a tough move. But, like I didn't have much money and I, went to India and I just figured this was what I was supposed to do. Like I knew I was supposed to do it. I knew nobody in New Mexico. I ended up being made a preceptor for the Sajmark system. I struggled to get a job there for a couple of months. That was pretty tough. Like I lived in, I was just barely, I was getting in debt, I had some credit card debt and whatever. And then I got a job that paid okay, it wasn't great. And then I got married there, moved to Idaho after going through graduate school because there was an internship there. And we wanted to get out of New Mexico because my ex was had gone through a very difficult divorce. There was a whole thing there. And then, Idaho just didn't pan out. So I went back to Massachusetts, which sucked because it was going back to where, so there's, these are years apart. And, we struggled financially. I couldn't get a job. We had 6 kids, I had 4 kids. And, there was a lot of difficulty. We were on food stamps and social services at times. When I was working, I couldn't make enough money to support the family. It was, difficult times. And my ex was sabotaging everything. She had, her mental issues and she would be suicidal. I talk about this extensively in the Journey series. And then eventually moving to India was kind of a last-ditch effort because my family was falling apart and, the thing with the farm and all these things. And so with all these circumstances, there wasn't a lot of money and, things just fell into place, right? And it was me having faith that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. Same thing with this YouTube channel. But I haven't had things like healthcare, and of course now you have to with the way the Obamacare. But I bear like minimum healthcare, and I don't rely on the allopathic medical model. And I don't have a retirement I have whatever Social Security is there, so I don't have the same kind of situation that other people have. Like I've been blessed in different kinds of ways, but I'll just assume that I'll be working till I die. Eventually, my wife and I will be full-time farmers. And I'll probably do this as a hobby. Once in a while, maybe I'll post an audio or narrative, go back to making videos about homesteading. And, like at some point, I'm just going to get tired of covering all this bullshit. And, it'll just be time for me to do just the part of it that has the most value, which is, whatever kind of homesteading knowledge I have and the idea of divinity within. But having said all that, this person is completely wrong, right? Like just like stupid shit that people say. And it's because you don't have the ability to see beyond, you have limited information, and then you're not able to get a sense of the person. You're not getting a sense of me. Like, why would I lie about being an introvert? You're definitely an extrovert. Like, why would I lie about that, right? Why would I pretend why would I have a silver spoon in my mouth? Or whatever it is, right? Like, it's just like stupid. It's like stupid stuff. I mean, we're all privileged by living in America. We're better off. Like, I've seen real poverty, and nothing that I've experienced is like that. And I mean, poverty in other countries is completely different than poverty in America, because at least in America you can see the wealth around you. But in these impoverished places, it's I mean, there's a lot of poverty in America, but it's much worse in these other countries in terms of your life with poverty. But anyways, I want to get back to my central point about changing here. And so when I started doing Sajmarg's system, this guy Fred was a hippie, Jewish guy that had gone to India and had started Sajmarg and became a practitioner of the system and became a preceptor. And, he was kind of a weird guy, and a lot of people, I would say didn't like him, but, he had some issues. His parents ended up doing the meditation, but, he was great for me. He was a wonderful preceptor. And he used to tell me stories about going to India, and he went to see the second master of the system named Babaji. And he had, was constantly dating women and bringing pictures over and showing Babaji. And, like he wasn't finding someone to marry. And so he brought this picture of the girl and to show Babaji. And Babaji never said, anything bad about people. Like Charji had his successor said, it's because Babaji was always looking for what was best in people. He was always looking for the saint within. And whatever was there in its way was just something to be cleaned off. Whatever was obstructing that person's saint from coming out from their actualizing their soul, whatever was obstructing it, their personality, their samskaras, their who they were as a person, all their bullshit. He didn't concern himself with that. Like, he didn't care what the person was doing for a living, or what their family situation was and where they came from, their country or their ethnicity, all the superficial things. He cared about the divinity within them and helping that person achieve that, realization of that aspect of themselves. And so he very rarely said anything negative about people because he was always looking for what was best in people. But Fred showed him this picture of this woman, and he just tore into her and said she was like this horrible person. And like he said all these things. Fred was shocked. So he goes back to America, and everything that he had said about her came true. Like she was like a nightmare. But, at the end of it, Babaji looked at him and said, I could clean your marriage samskaras. These impressions, whatever your fate is in terms of your marriage. And Fred took it as that he wouldn't get married at all. So he said, no thanks. And I was like, Fred, he meant, the bad stuff. He goes, yeah, I know that now. And Fred went on to have a marriage that lasted 8 hours. He got married at a gathering. And then, not such a great marriage later. I think he ended up getting divorced. He had one kid. But he didn't want that thing cleaned. And, he didn't want it to be purified. And people want to experience what they want to experience. People are addicted to their pain and their suffering and their problems, and they don't want to give this shit up, right? And I've seen it over and over again. People just don't want to get rid of the baggage that hurts them, the things that sabotage them. I mean, this is what I cover here. There's divinity within everyone, but they don't want that shit. They don't want that connection. They don't want to actualize that. They just want to suffer their miserable, mistake-ridden lives and doing the same thing over and over again. 4 marriages, and each time the person's exactly the same type of personality, and never, figuring out that you're just marrying the same person over and over again, and just, doing the dumb shit over and over again. And they just don't want it. They don't want to change. And this election and this Loomer stuff and whatever's going on with Trump and all this self-sabotage and, the Kamala stuff and, all this, contrived BS stuff that's always going to have a bad end. Like when you manipulate and you lie and you do things in a deceptive way, it always comes back to haunt you. Like, you haven't learned that fucking yet. I mean, You know, people who are running the system haven't learned that. It keeps on coming back to bite them in the ass, and they never really figure out that when you unalign yourself, you dissolve your relationship with the divinity within you, and you start, bullshitting your way through life and forcing your egotistical way through, whatever on other people in the world. It always comes back to you, like it always does. And it just makes it harder. It's like you're going in the wrong direction, and you're eventually going to have to turn around and go in the right direction. But people still just, they don't want to do it. They've been told over and over again, warned over and over again, the divine forces. And so if you align yourself with your soul's path, life is just, life is but a dream, right? It's, you're just moving along, you're going with the current, and you're doing what your soul intended. And your life is just so much better in ways I can't even describe, right? When you're willing to put your egotistical desires aside, right? And you don't have those even to start with, right? If you don't have, some pie-in-the-sky desire to be rich and famous and, to be all these things, and you don't have these materialistic desires, but you're just willing to, do the work that you're assigned to and play the role that you're supposed to and find your soul's path and navigate that path, life is amazing. Like, it's completely different because you just have a sense you're doing the right thing, and there's a confidence that, even when things are scary or they look like they could go wrong, or, you're at the edge of the cliff and things are about to go the wrong way, if you're making decisions that your soul is backing, things will just end up working out. Not because that's what's supposed to happen in terms of your material life, is that your material life has to be managed in such a way that you can complete your tasks, right? That you can discharge your duty. And when you do that, it feels good and you feel congruent and you're not lost. And, I've been lost and goalless, without a goal, and, in different times in my life, and particularly a period in my early 20s before I found the Sajmark system. And that to me is living in hell. When you don't have a purpose, you don't have a reason for being, and you're just wandering around without, like wondering why you're even here or what you're supposed to be doing here. And it feels bad, like it's just feeling, disconnected. And so, this thing that I've been doing for years, Sajmark system, helps people to achieve that. And most people will hear that, and lots of you people are lost. You'll hear it, and you might even believe it, and you say, oh, that sounds interesting. But we won't do it, because that's just the nature of humanity right now. And, until that changes, we're all going to be going in the wrong direction. All right, so I was going to cover some more things here, but this is a long video now because this long narration. I had just a little bit more to add to this. The first part is, I told this story about going to the Virgin Islands, and I think that was what this comment was in response to. And so, the idea was there. I had this idea for a while that, that waiting tables is one of the few jobs you can do in a tropical paradise. Like, there's places that people go to vacation, which are usually like the best places, right? Where, people would wish they could live all year round. And most people can't because there's no work there. There's just tourist-related work. And one of the big advantages of waiting tables is where tourists go is one of the best places to do it. You can make more money there. When you're on vacation, you get the whole idea. I said it before. And so I was thinking about doing that. That was my next move. And I was just looking for the right situation. And then my car breaks down. And so then, this story I told about how my old roommate's ex-girlfriend, who I got along with, we had, a good relationship. And she stops by, and, she hadn't seen me since I left for Atlanta. And I came back, and she said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm looking to go and move to Hawaii or something. Like, 'cause, and I explained the whole thing. And she said, oh, me and my friends are going to move to the Virgin Islands. So I was like, well, that's not an accident, right? And then, it's the trip there. We go to live there, and it's a disaster. There were some good times at the beach. And, when we first got there, we, partied a little bit. But for the most part, it was very stressful. It was like living in a very unsafe place. And we didn't make the money that we were supposed to. It didn't go the way I would have imagined, right? And so what I would have imagined was working a couple of years in a tropical paradise and just loving life, right? Doing all the things that you get to do in a place like that. But that's not the way it went at all. And so it would seem like a mistake But we came back, and within a year or so, year and a half, I found Saj Mark through that process, right? So this woman I was dating, I mean, our relationship was doomed. Like we weren't, there was no future in our relationship. And the time of the Virgin Islands was was kind of a failure. It didn't go the way it was supposed to go. And yet she went to therapy, and then I went to the same person who ended up doing Saj Marg, and she didn't stick in Saj Marg either. She did it for about 6 months. She kind of enjoyed it, but had struggled with it. And so it was my path to Saj Marg, right? And so I wouldn't remove any of those steps. And the experience of the Virgin Islands is kind of interesting. And yet, I found this over and over again when, you're doing something like that involves your spiritual journey. Oftentimes, your ego has to be persuaded to do something that if it knew what was going to happen, wouldn't do it, right? I mean, I think a lot of times marriage and having kids and things like that are part of that, right? You have to have a fantasy or kind of a dream or imagine, using your imagination about the way something's going to turn out. And sometimes you move to a place and it's not because you're supposed to move there. Or you take a job somewhere and it isn't the job isn't important. It's like who you meet. Maybe you meet your spouse or, there's these ways that you get lured into doing something. You think you're doing it for one reason and then ultimately it becomes another reason. And so having that kind of, faith in the process, the third master of the Saj Mark system said, Americans have this sort of wonderful courage that they'll go out and try anything. The adventurous entrepreneurial spirit, like in India, it's just so tie yourself to institutions. My brother and I talked about my dad, who was kind of a fear-based person, and he worked the same miserable job for 35 years. Like he didn't like his job, complained about it, but he just, had this sense of tying himself to an institution. I think he was close to getting his master's degree or something that he could have been a professor. Like he had ways of bettering his position, getting better jobs, but just playing it safe. And in India, they do that all the time. And this is what Master Charji was talking about. Like because of the stress and the shame that goes along with failure, and they just don't try things. And they want a lot of safety and reassurances before they travel or do different things. I mean, they can tolerate really difficult lifestyle, like difficult sleeping accommodations, like they'll sleep on floors and, these things. But it's very, safety oriented. Whereas in America, people try things all the time. People are told you can be anything in this world, and which isn't true, but people believe it, and they live their dreams and they go for it. And it's not everybody, but Americans are more apt to do that than other people. But I also grew up in the insurance capital of the world in Connecticut, and I just never thought much about insurance and insurance policies, and I haven't had those kind of things. Like I haven't had a safety blanket. Like I've always been, one disaster away from being homeless. And so, but it's been something where no matter what, I was going to end up where I am right now. Like it's just all paths led to, this inevitability of this thing I'm doing here. And the other piece to this is most people are bankrupt of love. Like everyone has a God bank, a love bank inside of them. You have godly energy, love energy inside you. When you're born with whatever love energy you have as a little baby, and it gets eroded over time by your family, by life, by disappointments, like soul-crushing type of things. And then inevitably people, their prana, their life energy, they become desperate and they're bankrupt and devoid of this energy, and they, crave it. And I've talked about these celebrities and people that are able to get little bits of love energy from materiality, really rich people, from other people. They're able to suck it off the crowd. They're able to, get this energy in little doses from the adoration of, an audience or whatever it might be, and from success or things like that. But mostly people are, devoid of love energy. They get into these love relationships and they're looking for somebody else to love them, but they can't really muster any kind of love in return. These horizontal love relationships where there's no connection to God. And through the Saj Mark system, you just end up being saturated with this energy. Like not only is your love bank filled, but it gets refilled, and even as just a practitioner, you radiate this energy. And people can feel it. Like one of the reasons people watch these videos and it affects people when you meet them. Not everybody senses it or feels it, but doors open for you and things. There's a flow to it, and certainly somebody who's willing to distribute this energy when there's a plan in place. The divine forces that are managing this planet are going to be there and support that person. Like it's been said over and over in Seismark's system, while you're doing God's work, God's doing your work, right? As long as you're willing to participate in not some imaginary bullshit way, but where you're able to, when you take on responsibilities and you agree to do God's work, there's a lot of fine print. There's a lot of things you have to change and eat and do that your ego wouldn't have signed off on when you started. But if you're willing to, do those things to become the kind of person you need to become to do the work that God assigned to you, then, you'll be supported in everything that you do. And, that's a different kind of insurance policy, right? Like there's divine forces watching over your path. And, even up until the point where you're going to die, there'll be, connection that facilitates an easy transition from here to the, to the brighter world the next, after you leave your body. And so, these are some of the reasons I've been able to do what I've done over the years and not have, not be a trust funder or a silver spoon and not be an extrovert, right? The other part of this is I always have extrovert friends. My wife is somewhat extroverted and she's good with people. And I always had people who were social. Like I always had friends would figure out social plans, people who are like sort of facilitators for social, my social circle. I had friends in high school that would find out where the parties were and, they would interact with people and then they would just tell me and we'd go, we'd go to these places. But, I couldn't have done that myself. I'm not a networker. I don't have those abilities, but I always have people in my life that, fill that hole, right? And as long as I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, these things that are the things that I'm good at, the things that I have, maybe more talent in than most people. And then I have deficits in others. And there has to be, some sort of support system to compensate for those deficits. So, these are just other thoughts I had about what I was talking about here. But again, this idea of working for God, and it's not like you just, I guess you could just say to God, I want to serve you. And when you do that, when you make that leap, it's, it's a phenomenal, change in your existence. And if you follow through on it and you have faith in it, again, like people oftentimes hear voices and it's not God. And, so it's not always great, because people are crazy or they're not able to, they don't have enough clarity in their, they're spiritually gross or they have, mental issues and they're not able to, clearly see the path that's laid out in front of them. And they imagine things. Imagination can run wild. So, it's not, I'm not advising people to do it. It has to be something that, that it just naturally unfolds. But anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paravano, definitely important for the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.